I never thought I'd be the woman who discovers her husband wants her dead. But there I was, gripping my steering wheel, my heartbeat drowning out the rain, hammering my windshield, while the truck behind me inched closer. The headlights blinded me through my rearview mirror. Too bright, too close. My knuckles whitened as I navigated the slick mountain road, each hairpin turn revealing another stretch of darkness. The truck stayed on me like a predator, close enough that I couldn't see its license plate. "Just pass me already," I muttered, easing toward the narrow shoulder to let them by. They didn't pass. Instead, the truck accelerated, its grille suddenly filling my mirror. The impact came with a sickening crunch of metal. My car lurched forward, tires losing their grip on the wet asphalt. I screamed as my sedan smashed through the guardrail and plummeted down the embankment. The world spun, glass shattered. Pain exploded across my chest as the airbag deployed. Then darkness. I woke to the hiss of rain on crumpled metal and the copper taste of blood in my mouth. My car rested at an impossible angle against a tree, 20 feet down the slope. Above, through the shattered window, I could see the gap in the guardrail where I'd gone through. No sign of the truck. My phone had fallen somewhere in the wreckage. With trembling fingers, I unbuckled my seatbelt and nearly collapsed onto the driver's side door. Every movement sent shards of pain through my ribs. I found my phone wedged under the seat, screen miraculously intact. "Lindsay? Jesus Christ, are you okay?" Lance's voice crackled through the speaker when he picked up. "Someone ran me off the road," I choked out. "The mountain pass near Ridgeline. I need help." "Don't move. I'm calling 911 right now. I'll be there as fast as I can." By the time they pulled me from the wreckage, my body was one massive bruise. The paramedics strapped me to a backboard while a police officer took notes about the truck that had disappeared into the night. "Probably a drunk driver," he suggested, but something about his dismissive tone made my skin crawl. Lance arrived as they loaded me into the ambulance, his face pale with worry. He climbed in beside me, clutching my hand like I might slip away. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered, pressing his lips to my bruised knuckles. At the hospital, they confirmed 3 cracked ribs, a mild concussion, and enough bruising to make movement torture. Lance never left my side, fetching ice chips and adjusting my pillows with the attentiveness that had made me fall in love with him 8 years ago. "You need anything else?" he asked, smoothing my hair back from my forehead. "Just sleep," I murmured, the pain medication making my thoughts fuzzy. "I'll be right here." He settled into the chair beside my bed. I drifted off to the steady beep of monitors and Lance's warm hand in mine. Something woke me hours later. The hospital room was dark except for the glow of monitors. Lance was gone, but I could hear his voice in the hallway. I reached for the water cup on my bedside table and knocked it to the floor with clumsy fingers. "Wasn't supposed to happen like this," Lance was saying, his voice low and urgent. "The whole point was to make it look like an accident." I froze, cup forgotten on the floor. "She survived," a man's voice responded. "We need to regroup. The insurance policy is ironclad. $3 million if she dies accidentally. Nothing if it looks suspicious." The words hit me like another truck. My husband, my Lance. The man who'd held my hand in the ambulance, who'd promised to love me forever, was discussing my death like a business transaction. "We stick to the plan," Lance continued. "She trusts me completely. That's our advantage. And if she suspects something?" "She won't. Lindsay sees what she wants to see. Always has." I pressed a hand to my mouth to stifle the sound, trying to escape my throat. Not a scream. Not a sob. Something primal and wounded that would give me away. "The medication they've got her on will make her confused," Lance said. "If she remembers anything about the truck, I'll convince her it was her imagination. Post-traumatic stress. Just make sure it's done before the quarterly audit. We can't risk her finding those transfers." 2 weeks, 3 at most. Their voices faded down the hallway. I lay perfectly still, tears streaming silently into my hair. The man I'd built my life with had tried to kill me tonight, and he was planning to try again. When Lance returned 10 minutes later, I kept my breathing deep and even, my eyes closed. I felt his weight settle into the chair beside me. His hand found mine again, squeezing gently. "I'm sorry it has to be this way," he whispered, thinking I was asleep. Behind my closed eyelids, something hardened in me. Lance didn't know it yet, but he'd just made the worst mistake of his life. He'd failed to kill me, and now he'd given me something far more dangerous than grief. He'd given me warning. I spent the next 3 days in the hospital playing the role of grateful wife. Every time Lance brought me flowers or adjusted my pillows, bile rose in my throat. His fingers brushing mine felt like spiders crawling across my skin, but I smiled. I thanked him. I pretended I didn't know he wanted me in a coffin instead of a hospital bed. "The doctor says you can come home tomorrow," Lance said on the third morning, setting a paper cup of terrible hospital coffee on my tray. "I've already set up the guest bedroom downstairs, so you won't have to manage the stairs." How thoughtful of him to prepare a room where I'd be isolated from the rest of the house, where a pillow over my face wouldn't be heard by anyone. "That's sweet," I said, reaching for the coffee. My hand trembled. Not entirely an act, but I think I'd rather be in our bedroom. "I'll sleep better with you nearby." Something flickered behind his eyes. Annoyance? Panic? He recovered quickly, squeezing my shoulder. "Whatever makes you comfortable, babe." The endearment made my skin crawl. "Actually," I said, setting down the untouched coffee, "there's something I need to ask you." "Anything." "That night, on the road." I let my voice waver. "I keep having these flashes. The truck that hit me, it felt like it was targeting me specifically, not just a drunk driver." Lance's expression shifted to concern so perfect, it would have fooled me a week ago. The trauma can cause all kinds of confusion. The police report said it was likely a drunk driver who panicked and fled. "But what if it wasn't?" I pressed, watching him carefully. "What if someone wanted to hurt me?" He sat on the edge of my bed, taking my hand in both of his. "Lindsay, who would want to hurt you?" The audacity of the question made me want to scream. Instead, I looked down at our joined hands and whispered, "I don't know. That's what scares me." "Hey." He tilted my chin up. "You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you. Except orchestrate my murder." "I love you," I lied, the words tasting like ash. That night, after Lance left for home, I called Alea. My best friend since law school arrived 20 minutes later with contraband chocolate and fierce determination in her eyes. "Jesus, Lindsay," she gasped, taking in my bruised face. "You look like you went 10 rounds with a heavyweight." "You should see the car." I attempted a smile, but it faltered. "I need to tell you something, and you can't react loudly." Her expression sobered instantly. "What's wrong?" I told her everything, the crash, waking up, overhearing Lance's conversation. With each word, Alea's face darkened like a gathering storm. "That motherfucking—" "Shh." I grabbed her wrist. "I need you to help me, not murder him in the hospital parking lot." "That can be plan B," she muttered, but lowered her voice. "What do you need?" "First, I need somewhere to go after I'm discharged. Somewhere Lance won't think to look." "My place, obviously." I shook my head. "That's the first place he'd check. I need to disappear while I figure out what he's up to." "What about your firm's corporate apartment? The one they keep for clients?" It wasn't perfect, but it would work. "I'll need access to our home office too. Lance mentioned something about transfers that I might find during an audit." "You think he's stealing from you?" "I don't know what he's doing, but I'm going to find out." The next morning, I went home with Lance. The familiar walls of our craftsman-style house felt like a prison now. Every corner held memories I couldn't trust anymore. 8 years of marriage, reduced to a lie. "Let me help you upstairs," Lance said, reaching for my elbow. I flinched away instinctively, then covered it with a wince. "Sorry, still sore." His smile tightened. "Of course." That night, I lay beside him in our bed, listening to his breathing deepen into sleep. When I was certain he wouldn't wake, I eased out from under the covers. Each movement sent pain shooting through my ribs, but I bit my lip and kept going. Our home office was at the end of the hall. I closed the door silently behind me and powered on my laptop. If Lance was hiding financial documents, they'd be password protected. But after 8 years together, I knew all his passwords, or thought I did. His usual combination failed, so did his backup. Frustrated, I tried combinations of our anniversary, his birthday, his mother's maiden name. Nothing worked. Then I tried Kingsley, his business partner's name. The screen unlocked. My hands shook as I navigated through folders. Most contained the expected files for their property development company, but one folder, labeled simply escrow, caught my attention. Inside were wire transfer records, massive sums moving between accounts I didn't recognize. "What are you doing?" I jumped, slamming the laptop closed. Lance stood in the doorway, his silhouette menacing in the darkness. "I couldn't sleep," I said, heart hammering. "Thought I'd check work emails." He stepped into the room, and I fought the urge to back away. "At 3 in the morning, with my laptop?" "I grabbed the wrong one in the dark." The lie sounded pathetic even to my ears. Lance moved closer, his expression unreadable in the dim light from the hallway. "What did you see?" "Nothing," I said too quickly. "Just the login screen." His hand shot out, gripping my wrist hard enough to bruise. "Don't lie to me, Lindsay. What did you see?" In that moment, the pretense between us shattered. The man I'd married was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone capable of planning my death for money. "Let go of me," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. His grip tightened. "Answer the question." "I saw enough," I whispered, meeting his eyes. "I saw enough to know my accident wasn't an accident at all." Lance's eyes widened, then narrowed to slits. "You're confused. The medication." "Stop!" I twisted my wrist free. "I heard you in the hospital, talking about making my death look like an accident, about insurance money." For a heartbeat, he seemed genuinely shocked. Then his expression hardened into something I'd never seen before. Calculation replacing the mask of concern he'd worn for days. "You misunderstood," he said, voice eerily calm. "I was discussing a client's insurance policy with Kingsley. At 3 in the morning? In my hospital room?" I backed toward the door. "Do you think I'm stupid?" "I think you're traumatized and jumping to insane conclusions." He stepped closer, blocking my exit. "Listen to yourself, Lindsay. You're accusing your husband of trying to kill you." "Because you did." My voice cracked. "That truck didn't appear out of nowhere. You arranged it." His laugh was cold. "This is absurd. You need help. What I need is to get away from you." I tried to push past him, but he caught my arm. "You're not going anywhere." His fingers dug into my bruised skin. "Not until you calm down." Fear shot through me, but beneath it, something else was building, rage. This man had shared my bed, my life, my trust, and he'd tried to end me for money. I drove my knee upward, catching him between the legs. He doubled over with a strangled cry, and I shoved past him, ignoring the screaming pain in my ribs. "You bitch!" he gasped behind me. I grabbed my phone and purse from our bedroom and fled down the stairs, each step jarring my injured body. I could hear him recovering, following. My car keys were in the bowl by the front door. I snatched them and stumbled outside into the cold night air. Lance appeared in the doorway as I backed my car down the driveway. His face, illuminated by the porch light, was contorted with fury. I'd never seen that expression before, but now I wondered if it had always been there, hidden beneath the charm. I drove straight to Alea's apartment, calling her on the way. "He knows," I said when she answered. I confronted him. "I'm coming to you." 20 minutes later, I sat on Alice's couch while she paced her living room, a baseball bat propped against the wall. "Just in case." "We need to call the police," she insisted. "And tell them what? That I overheard a conversation? That my husband has files I don't understand?" I shook my head. "I need evidence before I do anything. He tried to kill you. And I need to prove it." I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling Sage." Sage had been my mentor when I first joined the firm. Now a senior partner, she specialized in financial crimes, exactly what I suspected Lance of committing. Lindsay? Her voice was thick with sleep when she answered. It's 4 in the morning. I know, I'm sorry. But I need your help, and it can't wait. By sunrise, I was in Sage's office downtown, surrounded by stacks of financial documents I'd pulled from our home safe before leaving. Sage studied them through her reading glasses, her expression growing grimmer by the minute. These transfers, she said, tapping a statement. They're structured to avoid detection. Small enough to fly under regulatory radar, but they add up to millions. Lance's company handles property development deals, I said. Could it be legitimate? She gave me a look that made me feel like a first-year associate again. Legitimate businesses don't need to hide their transactions. This has all the hallmarks of money laundering. My stomach dropped. So he's not just trying to kill me for insurance money. He's protecting something bigger. Much bigger. Sage removed her glasses. Lindsay, if what you're telling me is true, you're in serious danger. Lance won't stop coming after you. I know. I rubbed my temples. But I can't just disappear. My whole life is here, my career, my friends. Then you need leverage. She leaned forward. Something that makes you more valuable, alive than dead. I thought about the laptop, the files I'd glimpsed. The evidence is in his computer, and in whatever audit he's worried about me conducting. The quarterly compliance audit, Sage nodded. It's scheduled for next week. Your department handles it. I'm supposed to be on medical leave. Perfect cover. You can access everything without raising suspicion. She squeezed my hand. But you can't go home. Not until this is resolved. I'll use the firm's apartment, I said. No one knows about it except the partners. Alea arrived with coffee and a change of clothes. Her eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep, but her voice was steady. Lance called me 3 times looking for you. I told him I hadn't heard from you. He didn't believe you. Probably not. She handed me a coffee. But he can't prove otherwise. My phone buzzed with a text from Lance. We need to talk. Please come home. I'm worried about you. I showed it to Alea, who snorted. Worried about his plan falling apart, more like. Another text arrived. I understand you're confused and scared. Let me explain everything. I love you. He's trying to gaslight you, Sage said, reading over my shoulder. Classic abuser tactic. I typed a response. I need time to think. I'm safe. Please don't contact me for a while. His reply was immediate. Where are you? I'll come to you. I turned off my phone. What now? Alea asked. I stared at the financial documents spread across Sage's desk. Now I become the best damn forensic accountant this firm has ever seen. Lance thinks I'm a problem to eliminate. I'm about to become his worst nightmare. My phone lit up again. Not Lance this time, but Kingsley. The message chilled me to the bone. Whatever you think you know, you're wrong. For your own safety, stop digging. I stared at Kingsley's message until Alice snatched the phone from my hands. That manipulative bastard, she hissed after reading it. He's trying to scare you off. It's working, I admitted, my hands trembling. If Kingsley's involved too, they have resources, connections. They could... Stop. Sage's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. This is exactly what they want. Fear paralyzes. We need you thinking clearly. She was right. I took a deep breath, wincing at the pain in my ribs. I need to talk to Kingsley, face to face. Absolutely not, Alea protested. In a public place, I clarified. Somewhere they can't touch me. Sage considered this. It could work to our advantage. Keep him talking while we gather evidence. 3 hours later, I sat at a corner table in Meridian, the upscale restaurant where the firm often entertained clients. My bruised face had drawn concerned looks from the hostess, but I'd blamed it on my accident, with a tight smile. The lunch crowd provided the perfect cover, witnesses everywhere, including 2 associates from my firm at a nearby table. Kingsley arrived precisely on time, immaculate in his tailored suit. His expression betrayed nothing as he slid into the seat across from me. "Lindsay," he nodded, signaling for the waiter. "You're looking, well, considering." "Cut the crap, Kingsley." I leaned forward. "I know what you and Lance are doing." He ordered a scotch, neat, before responding. "And what exactly do you think we're doing? Money laundering through your development projects and planning my convenient accident to collect insurance money." His face remained impassive, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes. "That's quite an accusation. Based on what? A conversation you overheard while heavily medicated?" "Based on the transfers I found, the ones structured to avoid detection. I took a calculated risk. The ones I've already copied and secured." The waiter returned with Kingsley's scotch. He took a slow sip, studying me over the rim of his glass. "Lance said you might have seen some files. Files you misunderstood." "Ha, I understand enough." "Do you?" He set down his glass. "Do you understand that some very powerful people are involved in our business dealings? People who wouldn't appreciate scrutiny?" The threat wasn't subtle. I forced myself not to flinch. "Is that why you tried to kill me? Because I might notice discrepancies during the quarterly audit?" Something flickered across his face. Surprise? "Lindsay, I had nothing to do with your accident." "But you know it wasn't an accident." He didn't deny it. Instead, he leaned closer. "Lance has made some questionable decisions recently, decisions I advised against." "Like murdering his wife?" "Like involving his wife in the first place." Kingsley's voice dropped lower. "The insurance policy was his idea, a contingency plan he called it." My stomach twisted. "So you're throwing Lance under the bus to save yourself?" "I'm trying to help you understand the situation before you do something that can't be undone." He glanced around the restaurant. "These people Lance is involved with, they don't allow loose ends. People like you? People far more dangerous than me." He finished his scotch. "Walk away, Lindsay. Take a settlement from Lance, sign an NDA, and disappear. It's the only way this ends well for you." "And if I don't?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then I can't protect you." "I don't need your protection," I said, though my heart hammered against my bruised ribs. "I need the truth." Kingsley stood, buttoning his jacket. "The truth is rarely simple and never free. Ask yourself what it's worth to you." He left me sitting alone, my untouched water glass sweating onto the tablecloth. Back at the firm's apartment, I paced the living room while Alea and Sage processed what I'd learned. "Kingsley's trying to distance himself," Sage concluded. "Classic self-preservation." "But he confirmed Lance planned to kill you," Alea added. "That's something we can use." I shook my head. "It's still just hearsay. We need concrete evidence." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email. K." I opened my work email to find a message from an anonymous account. The attachment was a PDF. Bank statements showing transfers from an offshore account to a shell company I recognized from Lance's files. "Is Kingsley helping us?" Alea peered over my shoulder. "Or setting a trap," Sage warned. "This could be his insurance policy against Lance. If things go south, he has proof he cooperated." I forwarded the email to Sage's secure server. "Either way, it's more than we had before." "It's still not enough," Sage said. "We need the complete paper trail, and we need to know who these dangerous people are." A knock at the door froze us all. Alea grabbed a kitchen knife while Sage peered through the peephole. "It's Daria," she said, surprised. Daria Ferguson was the last person I expected to see. My colleague at the firm was more competitor than friend. Our relationship professional, but cool. She stepped inside, her sharp eyes taking in my bruised face and disheveled appearance. "I heard you were on medical leave," she said without preamble. "Then I saw you with Kingsley at Meridian." "Are you following me?" I demanded. "No." She placed a flash drive on the coffee table. "But I've been following Lance and Kingsley for months." We all stared at the tiny device. What is this? I finally asked. Evidence. Daria's expression was grim. I'm on the compliance team for the quarterly audit. 3 months ago, I noticed irregularities in accounts connected to their development company. I've been building a case ever since. Why are you giving this to me? Because someone tried to break into my apartment last night. Her voice was steady, but I saw fear in her eyes. And because you deserve to know what your husband is really involved in. I picked up the flash drive, suddenly aware that I was holding something people might kill for. It's not just money laundering, Daria said quietly. It's much worse. We gathered around my laptop as Daria opened files from the flash drive. What I saw made my blood run cold. Human trafficking, Seiji whispered, scrolling through documents showing young women brought in as hospitality staff for Lance and Kingsley's luxury developments. They're using the properties as fronts, Daria explained. The money laundering supports it, but the real profit comes from trafficking women through their international investment seminars. My stomach heaved. The development company Lance had built over the last 5 years, the business I'd helped him establish with my legal expertise and connections, was a criminal enterprise, and I'd never suspected a thing. There's more, Daria said, opening another folder. These are communications between Lance and someone called Dalton. They discuss your accident specifically. I stared at the screen, reading messages dated just days before my crash. Dalton, everything set for Thursday night? Lance, yes. Mountain Road after her dinner meeting. Clean and quick. Dalton, price is $50K. Half now, half when it's done. Lance, already transferred. Make it look like an accident. Dalton Moore, I breathed. The name hit me like another car crash. I know him. 3 pairs of eyes turned to me. We dated in law school, before I met Lance. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. It ended badly. How badly? Alea asked. He became obsessive, followed me, threatened me. I swallowed hard. I had to get a restraining order. And Lance hired him to kill you? Seiji looked incredulous. That's beyond twisted. It's personal, I realized. Lance didn't just want me dead for money. He wanted to use someone from my past, someone who already hated me. The room fell silent as the full weight of the betrayal sank in. My husband hadn't just planned my murder. He'd crafted it as a perverse form of poetic justice. We need to go to the FBI, Seiji said finally. This is federal-level crime. Not yet, I countered. These files are copies. We need originals, server access, something that can't be denied. And we need to move you somewhere safer, Alea added. If they realize Daria has shared this information. My place isn't safe either, Daria interrupted. I've booked a hotel room under a colleague's name. I rubbed my temples, trying to think through the fog of pain and betrayal. The quarterly audit is in 3 days. That's our chance to access everything officially. You can't seriously be planning to go into the office, Alea protested. It's the perfect cover. Everyone knows I'm a workaholic. No one will question me coming in despite my injuries. It's too dangerous, Seg argued. It's our best shot, I insisted. I'll go in, access the servers through the compliance portal, and download everything we need. Before anyone could object further, my phone rang. Lance's name flashed on the screen. Don't answer it, Alea warned. I have to. If I keep avoiding him, he'll get suspicious. I took a deep breath and put the phone on speaker. Hello? Lindsay, thank God. Lance's voice oozed relief. I've been worried sick. Where are you? Somewhere safe. I kept my tone neutral. I needed space to think. Baby, please come home. Whatever you think you heard or saw, we can work through it. I'm not ready to talk yet. Is this about the files on my laptop? His voice hardened slightly. Those are complex business matters. You're misinterpreting them. Maybe, I lied. That's why I need time. Time for what? To talk to people who don't understand our business? To make accusations that could damage everything we've built? The "we" made me want to scream. I dug my nails into my palm. I haven't talked to anyone. Then why was Kingsley texting me about your lunch meeting? My blood froze. I shot a panicked look at the others. I ran into him at Meridian, I said carefully. He approached me. And Daria? Did she approach you too? Daria's eyes widened in alarm. What are you talking about? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. Don't play dumb, Lindsay. The firm's security system logs everyone who accesses the apartment. Daria's keycard was used 2 hours ago. I'd forgotten about the security logs. A rookie mistake that could get us all killed. Lance, You have until tomorrow to come home. He cut me off. After that, I can't guarantee your safety, or the safety of anyone helping you. The line went dead. He's bluffing, Alice said, but her voice wavered. No, he's not. I stood up, ignoring the pain shooting through my body. We need to move, now. We packed essentials in silence, the weight of Lance's threat hanging over us. As Daria gathered the flash drive and laptop, her phone chimed with a text. The color drained from her face. What is it? I asked. She turned the screen toward me. It showed a photo of her apartment door, slightly ajar, with a simple message. Too late? We need to split up, Seiji decided. Different locations. Minimize the risk. No, I said firmly. That's exactly what they want. To isolate us, pick us off one by one. I grabbed my purse and the laptop. There's only one place we can go where Lance won't expect us, where we'll have the protection we need. Where? Daria asked. To find Dalton Moore. I met their shocked expressions with grim determination. The man Lance hired to kill me is our best chance at staying alive. That's insane, Alea protested. Maybe, but Lance doesn't know I know about Dalton, and Dalton doesn't know I survived the hit he was paid for. I headed for the door. Sometimes the most dangerous place is the safest. Finding Dalton wasn't difficult. Despite the years that had passed, I still remembered his patterns, his preferences. Some obsessions leave permanent marks on both parties. He owned a dive bar on the edge of town called The Last Call. Fitting, considering his side business. The neon sign buzzed and flickered as we pulled into the gravel parking lot just after midnight. This is a terrible idea, Alea muttered from the passenger seat. We'd left Sage and Daria at a motel outside the city limits, reasoning that splitting into pairs was safer than staying together or separating completely. Probably, I agreed, staring at the bar's grimy windows. But we're out of good options. What exactly is your plan here? Walk up to the man who tried to kill you and ask for protection? I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. My bruised face told its own story. I'm going to offer him something better than what Lance paid him. Your husband already tried to have you killed once, Alea reminded me. What makes you think Dalton won't just finish the job? Professional pride. I reached for the door handle. He failed, and someone else knows he failed. That damages his reputation. That's a hell of a gamble. Stay in the car, I told her. If I'm not back in 20 minutes, call Seiji and get as far away as possible. The bar's interior matched its exterior, dingy, dark, and smelling of stale beer and desperation. A few patrons hunched over their drinks, none bothering to look up as I entered. Behind the bar stood Dalton, older than I remembered, but still recognizable. The lean build had thickened, his once sharp features softened by time and hard living. But his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, hadn't changed at all. Those eyes found mine immediately. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by something I couldn't quite read. Surprise? Fear? He recovered quickly, wiping his hands on a towel. Well, he said as I approached the bar. Look what the cat dragged in. Hello, Dalton. Lindsay. He set down a glass with deliberate care. You look like shit. Funny story about that. I slid onto a bar stool, ignoring the pain in my ribs. Someone ran me off Mountain Pass Road last Thursday. Tried to make it look like an accident. His expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened against the bar top. Sounds dangerous. You should be more careful. The thing is, I continued, keeping my voice low, the job wasn't finished, and now Lance is scrambling. Dalton's eyes darted around the bar before returning to mine. I don't know what you're talking about. $50,000, half up front, half on completion. I leaned closer. Except there was no completion, was there? Just a botched job and a very alive target sitting in front of you. He poured 2 shots of whiskey, sliding one toward me. You always were too smart for your own good. Smart enough to know Lance won't pay the second half now, and smart enough to know he might want to tie up loose ends. I left the shot untouched. Loose ends like the hitman who failed. A muscle twitched in Dalton's jaw. What do you want? Information, protection, and a chance to bring Lance down before he can hurt anyone else. Dalton laughed, a harsh sound with no humor. And why would I help you? Because I can pay better than Lance, and because I can keep you out of prison when this all comes crashing down. He studied me for a long moment. Wait here. He disappeared through a door behind the bar. I glanced at my watch. 10 minutes had passed. Alea would be getting anxious. Dalton returned with a manila envelope, which he slid across the bar. Insurance policy, I keep records on all my clients. Inside were photos of Lance meeting Dalton at a storage facility, text messages discussing payment terms, and a hand-drawn map of the mountain road with an X marking the spot where I went off. Why keep this? I asked, leafing through the evidence. Like you said, loose ends. He knocked back his shot. Your husband's involved with dangerous people. I wanted leverage if things went south. The trafficking operation. Dalton's eyebrows rose slightly. You know about that? Oh, enough to know it's bigger than Lance and Kingsley. Who's really running it? He glanced around the bar again, then leaned in. A woman named Elise. No last name that I know of. Old money, political connections. Lance and Kingsley are just middle management. The name meant nothing to me, but it was a start. Where can I find her? You don't. She finds you. Dalton refilled his glass. Look, whatever you're planning, drop it. Take what I've given you and disappear. These people don't play games. Neither do I, not anymore. I gathered the documents. I need somewhere safe for tonight, somewhere Lance wouldn't think to look. Dalton sighed, resignation in his eyes. There's an apartment above the bar. It's not much, but it's off the grid. Thank you. Don't thank me. His voice hardened. I'm not doing this out of the goodness of my heart. When this is over, we're even. The restraining order, the reputation you ruined, all of it. Clean slate. I nodded, understanding the transaction. I'll get Alla from the car. The friend who helped you put me away? Dalton's laugh was bitter. This just keeps getting better. Alea was furious when I explained the arrangement, but she followed me upstairs to Dalton's Spartan apartment. The space was clean but impersonal, a place to sleep, not to live. I don't trust him, she whispered as we settled on the threadbare couch. He tried to kill you. He failed to kill me, I corrected, and now he's as much a target as we are. My phone buzzed with a text from Saig. Daria's gone. Left while I was showering. Took the flash drive. Damn it! I showed Alia the message. You think she went back to Lance? Or she got scared and ran. I tried calling Daria's number, but it went straight to voicemail. Another text from Saig appeared. Someone's outside the room, calling police. Then nothing. We need to go, Alea said, already on her feet. It's too late. Dalton stood in the doorway, a gun in his hand. Your friend Daria sold you out. Lance knows you're here. My heart plummeted. How do you know that? He tossed me his phone. On the screen was a text from Lance. She's with you, 100K to finish the job. Both of them. So what happens now? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Dalton checked his watch. Now we have about 10 minutes before Lance's men arrive. And we need to be gone in 5. We? Like I said. He tucked the gun into his waistband. Clean slate, let's go. We fled through the bar's back exit as headlights swept the parking lot. Dalton led us to a nondescript sedan parked in the alley, its engine already running. Get in, he ordered, sliding behind the wheel. I hesitated, every instinct screaming that trusting Dalton was insanity, but the alternative, facing Lance and whoever he'd brought, was worse. "Lindsay, come on!" Alea yanked open the back door. We peeled out of the alley as two SUVs pulled up to the bar. In the rearview mirror, I glimpsed men in dark clothing entering the building, their movements purposeful and coordinated. Not local muscle, professionals. "Where are we going?" I asked as Dalton navigated through back streets, keeping his headlights off. "Somewhere they won't look." His eyes flicked to the mirror constantly. "We need to ditch this car first. It's too easy to track." My phone buzzed. Sage again. "Safe. Police came. Told them it was a misunderstanding." "Where are you?" I texted back. "On the move. Daria betrayed us. Stay where you are." "We need to go to the firm," I said suddenly. "Tonight." Dalton shot me a look like I'd lost my mind. "That's the first place they'll look." Whoa, exactly why they won't expect us to go there. I leaned forward between the seats. "The quarterly audit starts tomorrow. The compliance team will be working late tonight, preparing the servers. The security will be focused on the main entrance, but I know another way in." "And once we're inside?" Alea asked. "We get everything. The original files, server access, all of it. Enough to take to the FBI with ironclad proof." Dalton shook his head. "Too risky. More risky than running with no plan?" I challenged. "Lance is always 3 steps ahead because he knows how I think. It's time to do something he'd never expect." 20 minutes later, we abandoned Dalton's car in a shopping mall parking lot and took an Uber to a coffee shop 2 blocks from my firm. The night air was cold against my face as we walked the final distance, staying in the shadows. "There's a service entrance on the east side," I explained. "The cleaning crew uses it. My key card should work." "Should," Alea hissed. "Will," I corrected, "unless Lance has already had my access revoked." The service door beeped green when I swiped my card. We slipped inside, into the fluorescent-lit back hallway that smelled of industrial cleaner. "The compliance department is on the 14th floor," I whispered. "This time of night, there should only be a skeleton crew." We took the service elevator, my heart pounding harder with each floor we passed. When the doors opened, I peered out cautiously. The hallway was empty, but I could see light spilling from the glass-walled compliance office at the end of the corridor. "Wait here," I told Dalton and Alea. "If something goes wrong, get out and call Sage." I walked toward the light, trying to appear casual despite my bruised face and the fear coursing through me. Through the glass, I could see 2 people hunched over computers, junior associates pulling an all-nighter for the audit. I pushed open the door. "Working late?" They jumped, startled by my appearance. "Ms. Wood." The younger one, Ryan, I remembered, looked shocked. "We thought you were on medical leave." "I am. Officially." I moved to an empty workstation. But I heard there were some irregularities in the Young Green Development accounts. I wanted to check personally. The associates exchanged glances. "Ms. Ferguson already pulled those files," the other one said. "She said you'd authorized it." My stomach dropped. "When?" "Earlier today. She took them to Mr. Young for review." Of course she had. Daria had been working with Lance all along, feeding him information about our movements while pretending to help us. "I see." I kept my voice neutral. "Well, I'd like to review them myself. Can you access the server backup?" Ryan hesitated. "We'd need authorization from a partner," I finished. "Like Sage Taylor? Call her, she'll confirm." While Ryan made the call, I texted Alia. "Daria took the files to Lance. Need server backup." Sage must have been convincing, because minutes later, Ryan was logging me into the system with his credentials. "The compliance portal is already open," he explained. "All the audit files are accessible from there." I scanned the folders quickly, looking for anything related to Young Green Development. Most had already been emptied, Lance covering his tracks. But in a subfolder labeled Historical Data, I found what I needed. Server logs showing access patterns, transfer records, and most damning of all, emails between Lance, Kingsley, and someone using the alias Elise. It had to be I was downloading the files to a secure drive when the office door opened. I turned, expecting Alla or Dalton. Instead, Lance stood in the doorway, Kingsley beside him. Behind them, Daria watched with cold eyes. Lindsay. Lance's voice was soft, almost sad. Always so predictable. The associates shrank back, sensing the tension. Lance gestured, and they scurried out, leaving us alone. Predictable? I stood my ground. You didn't predict I'd survive your little accident. A miscalculation, he admitted. One I won't repeat. It's over, Lance. I have everything. The trafficking operation, the money laundering, the hit you ordered on me. It's all being uploaded to the FBI as we speak. Uncertainty flickered across his face. You're bluffing. Am I? I nodded toward the computer, where a progress bar showed the upload at 89%. You taught me to always have a contingency plan. Lance lunged for the computer, but I was faster, putting myself between him and the screen. He grabbed my injured ribs, making me gasp with pain. You stupid bitch, he hissed. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I know exactly what I'm dealing with. I gritted through the pain. A coward who tried to have his wife killed, rather than face her in divorce court. His hand closed around my throat. It was never about the divorce. It was about keeping you from finding out about Elise, about what we've built. Built? I choked out. You're trafficking women, destroying lives. Creating an empire, he corrected, tightening his grip. Black spots danced at the edges of my vision. Behind Lance, I saw Kingsley watching impassively, Daria with a hint of regret in her eyes. Then a new figure appeared in the doorway. Dalton, his gun trained on Lance. Let her go, he said quietly. Lance laughed without releasing me. You had your chance to kill her. You failed. I missed on purpose, Dalton replied. Insurance policy, just like the recordings I made of our meetings, the ones I sent to the FBI an hour ago. Lance's grip loosened slightly. You're lying. Check your phone, Dalton suggested. As if on cue, Lance's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, color draining from his face. The upload reached 100%. Complete. It's over, I said again, my voice raw. Lance's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw the truth. He had never loved me. I had only ever been a convenient cover, a respectable facade for his real life. If I'm going down, he whispered, you're coming with me. His hand moved to his jacket. I saw the glint of metal. A gunshot cracked through the air. Lance crumpled to the floor, blood blooming across his shoulder. Behind him stood Alea, Dalton's gun trembling in her hands. He was going to shoot you, she whispered. Kingsley bolted for the door, but Dalton caught him with a swift punch that sent him sprawling. Daria remained frozen, her face a mask of shock. I stared at my husband writhing on the carpet, clutching his wounded shoulder. The man I'd built a life with. The man who'd ordered my death. Something cold and final settled in my chest as I knelt beside him. You never loved me, did you? I asked softly. Lance's eyes, clouded with pain, met mine. I loved what you represented. Respectability, connections, the perfect cover. And when I became a liability? Business decision. His laugh turned into a grimace. Nothing personal. This is personal. I pulled his phone from his jacket pocket. And now I'm going to find Elise and burn your entire operation to the ground. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone, probably the associates, had called the police. You won't find her, Lance gasped. She's untouchable. I held up his phone, showing him the screen. Your location tracking is still on. Every meeting you've had for the past 6 months is logged here, including the ones at the Westlake property. Fear flashed across his face. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. I stood up. I'm finishing what you started. The next hours passed in a blur of police statements, FBI interviews, and medical examinations. Dawn was breaking when Agent Rivera finally closed her notebook. We've verified the evidence you provided, she said. Combined with Mr. Moore's testimony and the server data, We have enough to charge your husband, Mr. Green, and Miss Ferguson with multiple federal crimes. And Elise? I asked. We're coordinating a raid on the Westlake property based on the location data you provided. She hesitated. But I should warn you, these trafficking networks have powerful protection. The woman you know as Elise may have already fled. She won't run, I said with certainty. She thinks she's untouchable. Agent Rivera studied me. We'll need you to testify. I'll do whatever it takes. After she left, Alea found me in the hospital waiting room, her eyes red from crying. I shot your husband. You saved my life, I corrected, taking her hand. How are you holding up? Surprisingly okay. She gave a shaky laugh. Turns out I'm capable of more than I thought. That makes two of us. Sage arrived with coffee and clean clothes. The firm's in chaos. The managing partners are trying to distance themselves from the scandal. Let me guess. They're claiming no knowledge of Lance's activities? While simultaneously launching an internal investigation to show how seriously they take compliance. Sage's smile was cynical. Politics as usual. What about you? Alia asked me. What happens now? I considered the question. For days, I'd been focused solely on survival and justice. I hadn't thought beyond exposing Lance. First, I'm going to the Westlake property, I decided. I need to see this through to the end. The FBI won't let you anywhere near an active raid, Sage warned. They don't need to know I'm there. 3 hours later, I watched from a hill overlooking the luxury development as FBI agents swarmed the property. Black SUVs lined the circular driveway of the main house, a modernist mansion of glass and steel that Lance had proudly shown me in architectural renderings. This is a bad idea, Dalton muttered beside me. He'd insisted on coming, claiming he needed to ensure his testimony aligned with the evidence. But I suspected he felt responsible for me now, a strange twist in our complicated history. I need to see her face, I said. The woman who made my husband decide I was disposable. Through binoculars, I watched agents escorting people from the house, young women looking shell-shocked, men in expensive suits being handcuffed. Then a figure emerged that made my breath catch. That's her, Dalton confirmed. Elise. She was striking, tall, elegant, with silver-streaked dark hair and the confident bearing of old money. Even in handcuffs, she radiated authority. As if sensing my gaze, she looked up toward our position, her expression inscrutable. You got what you wanted, Dalton said. Time to go. But something nagged at me, a connection I couldn't quite grasp. I zoomed the binoculars, focusing on Elise's face as an agent guided her into a vehicle. Recognition hit me like a physical blow. I know her, I whispered. That's Eleanor Mercer. Who? My mother's college roommate. She used to visit when I was a child. Memories cascaded. The elegant woman who brought me expensive gifts, who took a special interest in my education, who suggested the law firm where I eventually built my career. She's been watching me my whole life, I realized. Grooming me. For what? I don't know. I lowered the binoculars, my mind racing. But I'm going to find out. As we drove back to the city, I felt strangely hollow. The adrenaline that had carried me through the past week was fading, leaving raw grief in its wake. Not for Lance. That relationship had died the moment I heard him planning my murder. But for the life I'd thought I had. The future I'd believed in. What will you do now? Dalton asked, breaking the silence. I watched the city skyline emerge through the windshield, familiar yet somehow foreign. Rebuild. But differently this time. Differently? How? I thought about Lance, about Elise, about the elaborate deception that had shaped my life without my knowledge, about how easily I'd accepted the version of reality they'd constructed. With my eyes open, I said, no more convenient blindness, no more trusting without verifying. Dalton nodded, understanding in his eyes. The world's uglier that way. But real. I turned to watch the sunrise painting the clouds in fierce oranges and reds. I'd rather live in an ugly truth than a beautiful lie. As we reached the city limits, my phone rang. Agent Rivera with news. They'd found documentation at the Westlake property linking Elise's operation to political figures, judges, even law enforcement. The case was expanding by the hour. "We'll need you to come in again," she said. "There are connections here we don't fully understand yet." I'll be there," I promised, thinking of Eleanor Mercer's, Elise's, calculating eyes. The way she'd looked at me on that hillside, not with the shock of someone caught, but with the frustration of a chess player whose carefully arranged pieces had been scattered. This wasn't over, it was just beginning. I ended the call and straightened my shoulders, embracing the clarity that comes after devastation. Lance had tried to destroy me, believing I was just another piece in his game. Instead, he'd stripped away my illusions and forced me to become something stronger, more dangerous than the trusting woman he'd married. He'd tried to bury me. He didn't realize I was a seed.
Hi there, I'm Adele, and this Christmas, my parents told me something no child ever wants to hear. They said, "We love your friend's sister's kid more than yours." It wasn't just words. It was years of secrets, favoritism, betrayal. They cut my kids out of Christmas, spread lies about me to our entire family, even tried to take me to court to force their way back into our lives. How did it get this far? How did the people who raised me become the ones who broke me? If someone had asked me a year ago what the holidays meant to me, I would have said family, warmth, tradition. That's what I believed, until last fall, when my parents finally showed me where I really stood. It was a chilly Saturday afternoon in late October. Grant was helping Finn button up his little coat, while Maisie spun around the living room in her new dress. I watched them from the kitchen, sipping coffee, trying to shake off the heaviness in my chest. We were heading to my niece Leona's 8th birthday party at my parents' house. I told myself, like I always did, that maybe this year things would be different. That maybe they wouldn't make it so obvious who their favorite was. The party looked the same as every year. My mother's spotless living room, pumpkin-scented candles burning, and Martha and Gerald, my parents, floating around like royalty. Sabrina and Victor, my sister and brother-in-law, greeted us like nothing had ever happened. Like the years of subtle slights didn't exist. But it all unraveled when the gift opening started. My mother clapped her hands dramatically as Leona tore into the shiny wrapping paper. "Oh, look at that, an iPad, because she's such a good girl, so well-behaved and mature." Gerald chuckled, adding loudly enough for the whole room. "Not every kid knows how to act like Leona." I felt Maisie shrink beside me, her little fingers tightening around mine. Finn's smile faded as he stared at the stack of presents that would never belong to him. My parents' smiles never once turned our way. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was too sensitive. Then, 3 days later, while I was prepping lesson plans at the kitchen table, my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "We're keeping Christmas small this year. Just adults. And Leona." I reread it twice, thinking I misunderstood. But there it was, clear as day. My kids weren't welcome. I sat there, phone trembling in my hand, my heart breaking for Maisie and Finn. They finally said it out loud. I stared at that text message, my heart breaking for my kids. For days, the words echoed in my mind like a cold wind slamming against a locked door. Thanksgiving was coming, and I tried to focus on planning dinner. I chopped onions, measured flour, marinated the turkey, but my thoughts kept drifting back to that message. While prepping pie crust, I couldn't help but remember another Thanksgiving, 2 years ago. We had all gathered at my parents' house, as usual. That year, I had convinced myself to brush off the small comments, the subtle digs, but it had hit harder than I expected. Leona had walked in carrying a brand new iPad, a bow still taped to the box. Everyone had clapped and cheered like she'd won a Nobel Prize. My mom had said, loud enough for the whole room, "Well, she's responsible enough for something like this. That's why we wanted to give her something special." Maisie had sat quietly next to me, holding a small plastic jewelry set my parents had handed her earlier, like an afterthought. Finn had tugged at my sleeve, asking why Leona got the cool toy and not him. I'd smiled and said, "Maybe next year, buddy." But inside I felt something fracture. This year I wanted to protect them from that kind of hurt, but I couldn't stop it. The night before Thanksgiving, as I laid out plates and folded napkins, Maisie came into the kitchen holding a paper from school. "Mom, the holiday recital is tomorrow. Can Grandma and Grandpa come?" I swallowed hard and forced a smile. "We'll see." The next day, I scanned the auditorium during Maisie's performance. Every time she glanced into the crowd, I knew who she was looking for. After the show, while I helped her out of her costume, I checked my phone. A message from Sabrina blinked on the screen. "Leona won her school's award today. Mom and Dad went to watch. So proud." Maisie tugged at my arm. "Did Grandma and Grandpa see me sing?" I smiled tightly. "They couldn't make it, sweetie." That night, after tucking the kids in, I sat in the car outside my parents' house. I stared at their front porch, the lights glowing warm and inviting, like nothing was wrong. I gripped the steering wheel, my chest burning. I knew then something had to change. I knew then something had to change. But knowing didn't make it easier. A few days after Maisie's recital, I found myself unable to sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, long after everyone else had gone to bed, staring at the dark window, wondering how long I'd been pretending not to see the truth. My parents had always favored Sabrina's family, but lately, it felt like more than favoritism. It felt calculated. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something bigger beneath their smiles. That night, on impulse, I dug out an old folder from the cabinet, a folder I hadn't touched in years, filled with bank statements and email printouts. Back when Dad had heart surgery, I used to send money every month to help them out. I'd forgotten how much I'd given. I flipped through the pages until one envelope caught my eye. It wasn't something I remembered receiving. A letter from a bank I didn't even use. My name printed on the front. I opened it, curiosity turning to confusion. It was an account summary listing me as the authorized custodian of a college fund. For Leona. I stared at the paper, my heart pounding. It wasn't just that my name was there. It was the dates. The initial deposit lined up with the year I started sending money to help them. I picked up the phone and called the bank's number. My voice shook as I verified my identity, asked for details. The woman on the other end confirmed it. Yes, the fund was for Leona. Yes, the initial money had come from an account matching my old transfers. I hung up, my hands numb. They hadn't just favored Sabrina's child. They had used me to do it, without ever telling me. The next morning, I sat across from Grant at breakfast, barely touching my coffee. "They used my money," I said quietly, "to build a future for Leona, and they put it in my name so it wouldn't look suspicious." Grant frowned. "You're sure?" I slid the letter across the table. "Positive." He shook his head, the same disbelief I felt written across his face. "That's not family, Adele. That's manipulation." Later that evening, after the kids were asleep, I grabbed my keys and drove. I didn't tell Grant where I was going. When I pulled up outside my parents' house, I sat there for a moment, staring at the glow from the porch light, my heart thudding against my ribs. I wasn't going to let them keep hurting my family. I wasn't going to let them keep hurting my family. But cutting them off, walking away from my own parents, wasn't something I could do overnight. In the weeks that followed, I avoided their calls. When their names popped up on my phone, I silenced it without hesitation. Grant noticed the distance I'd created, but he didn't push. He knew better than anyone how much this was eating at me. December crept in, cold and unforgiving. The nights grew longer, the days shorter. I threw myself into work, holiday crafts with my students, baking cookies with Maisie and Finn, wrapping gifts under the soft glow of our own Christmas tree. I told myself this was enough, that we were enough. One night, after tucking the kids into bed, I curled up on the couch, scrolling aimlessly through my phone. My thumb froze when I saw it. A post from my mother. A picture of her living room, decked out in lights and garlands, Leona smiling wide in the center, Sabrina and Victor flanking her. My parents stood behind them, arms draped around Sabrina's shoulders. The caption read, "So blessed to celebrate Christmas early with our beautiful family. Grateful beyond words for our precious Leona. I reread it twice. No mention of me, no mention of Maisie or Finn, no sign we had ever existed. Scrolling through, the comments felt like pressing on a bruise. Beautiful family, one aunt wrote. Leona is growing up so well. You're so lucky, said another. I sat there, staring at the screen, my chest tightening like a vice. It wasn't just the post. It was the message behind it. My parents weren't hiding it anymore. They were rewriting the narrative, making it clear who counted in their version of family. I closed the app and set the phone down, my hands trembling. The next morning, I didn't mention the post to Grant. Instead, I made breakfast, packed the kids' lunches, and went about my day like nothing had shifted, like the ground hadn't cracked beneath me. But that night, as the kids colored by the fireplace and Grant read over work emails, I sat quietly beneath the twinkling lights of our tree, staring at the ornaments Maisie and Finn had made. I realized then that I'd spent years trying to earn a place at a table that was never meant for me, and I was done. The next call I got wasn't from my parents, it was from Grant. It was a Saturday afternoon, and the kids were sprawled on the living room rug, coloring Christmas cards for their teachers. I was in the kitchen, sifting flour for another batch of cookies, trying to cling to the quiet happiness inside these four walls. Grant walked in, phone still in his hand. His face told me everything before he even spoke. Your parents called me, he said flatly. I stopped stirring. What? He slid his phone onto the counter and crossed his arms. They didn't call you. They called me. The silence between us stretched until he finally added, They asked if I'd bring Maisie and Finn to Christmas dinner, without you. The bowl in my hands nearly slipped. They told me, Grant continued, voice tight, that you're being dramatic, that the kids shouldn't have to miss out just because you're upset. I felt the familiar knot twist in my stomach, a mix of rage, disbelief, and something colder. I set the bowl down gently, afraid of what I might do if I didn't. So now I'm the problem, I muttered. Grant shook his head. They said they didn't want to punish the children for your choices, as if you're the villain in this. I looked past him, at Maisie and Finn giggling over glitter pens, completely unaware they were being used as pawns. I took a breath, grounding myself. This isn't about the kids, I said quietly. It's about control. They want to decide who's worthy of being family. Grant nodded. What do you want me to do? I didn't hesitate. Nothing. I'll handle it. That night, after the kids had gone to bed and the house had settled into its usual quiet, I sat on the edge of our bed, phone in hand. I typed out the message slowly, carefully. If you ever go behind my back again, there won't be a next time. You've crossed the line. I stared at the words before hitting send. Afterward, I sat by the window, watching the snowfall, the world outside soft and still. I knew this wasn't over. I knew they'd never stop, not until I stopped them. But I had no idea how far they were willing to go. For a brief moment, after I'd sent that message, I believed maybe they'd finally heard me. The house was calm, quiet. Christmas was only days away, and I poured myself into the small, safe joys, baking sugar cookies with Maisie, helping Finn hang glittery stars on our tree. It almost felt like peace. Until the letter arrived. It was the afternoon of December 21st. I found the envelope in our mailbox, official-looking, stiff. My name typed neatly on the front. I opened it at the kitchen counter, thinking it was another Christmas card. Instead, it was a formal letter from a law firm, a demand notice. My parents, Martha and Gerald, were requesting reimbursement for 38 years of financial support, housing, and caregiving services. They had calculated the cost of raising me, down to groceries, medical bills, and emotional labor. The sum at the bottom made me dizzy. $76,000. Grant walked in and found me staring at the letter. "What's that?" he asked, voice cautious. I handed it to him without a word. His jaw tightened as he read. "They're billing you for being their daughter?" I nodded, the weight of humiliation heavy in my chest. "Merry Christmas, right?" That night, as I tried to shake the sting of it, my phone rang. Aunt Claire's name flashed on the screen. I answered, already bracing myself. Adele, she began sharply, what on earth is going on? Your parents told the family you're cutting them off, suing them, trying to destroy them. I can't believe you treat your own mother and father like this. I gripped the phone tighter. That's not what's happening, Aunt Claire. Well, they say you've turned your back on family, that you're ungrateful after everything they've done. After I hung up, I checked social media. My parents' friends, distant cousins, all posting vague, passive-aggressive quotes about selfish children and family betrayal. The narrative had been rewritten again, and this time, I was the villain. I sat at the dining table that night, every message, every cruel comment weighing on me like stones. Then I opened my laptop. I gathered everything, every text, every email, the demand letter, screenshots of their social media posts. I created a file, and I drafted one final message. If you keep attacking me, I will show everyone the truth. This is your last chance. My hands trembled as I hit send, but Christmas Eve would show me they had no intention of stopping. That evening, our house glowed softly with the warmth of string lights and the smell of cinnamon cookies in the air. Maisie and Finn danced around the living room, their laughter blending with the faint sound of Christmas music playing in the background. Grant and I exchanged a quiet smile, both of us silently hoping maybe, just maybe, tonight would be ours, untouched by the chaos of the past weeks. We had just finished setting out the gifts under the tree when the knock came. It wasn't timid or hesitant, it was deliberate. Grant shot me a look, and my stomach dropped. I already knew. When I opened the door, there they were, Martha, Gerald, Sabrina, Victor, and Leona, all bundled in coats, faces plastered with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Martha held a tin of cookies like it was some kind of peace offering. "Sweetheart," she said, voice syrupy, "let's not ruin Christmas. We're family." Gerald chimed in behind her. "Enough of this nonsense. We forgive you." Forgive me. Those two words cracked something deep inside me. I stepped outside, shutting the door behind me so Maisie and Finn wouldn't hear. "You don't get to forgive me," I said quietly. "You don't get to rewrite the story. I've spent my entire life trying to be enough for you, and now you're standing here like you're the ones who've been wronged?" Sabrina crossed her arms. "Adele, this is childish. Can't we just move on?" I felt my jaw tighten. "You mean forget everything you've done? Pretend you didn't try to turn my own kids against me?" Martha's smile faded. "You're tearing this family apart." "No," I said, voice sharp. "You did that." Before they could answer, I turned and closed the door. Later that night, when the house was quiet and the kids had finally fallen asleep, I went to lock the front door, and that's when I saw it. An envelope tucked under the doormat. My name wasn't on it. Maisie's was. I picked it up, my stomach sinking, and unfolded the letter. It was from Martha, written in looping, careful handwriting. It painted me as the villain, the reason Maisie couldn't see her real family, accused me of keeping her away from people who loved her. I felt my throat tighten as I read the last line. "One day, you'll understand how unfair your mother has been." My hands shook as I walked to the fireplace and tossed the letter in. I watched it curl and blacken, reduced to ash. When I turned around, Grant was standing in the doorway, watching me. "They don't get to play the victim anymore," I said quietly. "Tomorrow it ends." I woke up on Christmas morning ready to fight. The house was quiet when I padded downstairs, the faint smell of coffee already filling the kitchen. I could hear the soft hum of the kids' excited voices upstairs as they got ready to open presents. For a moment, I let myself breathe. I wanted today to belong to them, to us. Then the doorbell rang. Grant glanced at me over his coffee, brows pinched. "Expecting anyone?" I shook my head and walked to the door, heart sinking. It wasn't a neighbor dropping off cookies. It wasn't a package. It was a process server. He handed me an envelope without meeting my eyes. "Merry Christmas," he muttered before walking away. Inside was a court summons. Martha and Gerald were suing me for visitation rights, grandparents' rights. They were trying to force legal access to my children. The paper trembled in my hands. Grant appeared behind me, reading over my shoulder. "They can't be serious." I couldn't speak. My throat tightened around the lump rising there. It wasn't enough for them to rewrite the family narrative. Now, they wanted the law on their side. The rest of Christmas passed in a blur. I smiled for the kids, watched them tear into their gifts, but I felt hollow inside, waiting for the next blow. The following days were spent in meetings with lawyers, phone calls, paperwork. Each conversation chipped away at me. "They don't have a real case," my lawyer said firmly, "but they'll drag you through it. They'll drain you emotionally, financially. That's the game." By January, the court date was set. Walking into that courtroom felt surreal. Martha sat at one table, dabbing her eyes dramatically. Gerald wore his usual stiff expression, like he'd been wronged. They played their part well, poor grandparents being denied their precious grandchildren. I sat tall, calm, and when it was my turn, I presented everything. Every text, every manipulation, every time they had belittled and excluded my children. I let the judge see the truth without emotion clouding my words. It didn't take long. The judge ruled in my favor. There was no valid reason to force contact, no precedent, no justification. Outside the courthouse, I faced them one last time. Martha's eyes were cold now, her mask slipping. "You'll regret this," she said. I shook my head. "No, I'm finally free." Then I turned away. But walking away didn't mean the scars disappeared. By February, the snow had started to melt in patches across Madison. The holiday lights were gone, and with them, the weight of the court battle seemed to lift, at least on the surface. The mornings were quieter now. No anxious glances at my phone, no tension humming beneath every conversation. I went back to packing lunches, checking homework, and standing in the school drop-off line like any other mother. But even as life settled, something inside me hadn't. Some mornings, I'd catch myself staring out the kitchen window, wondering how it had come to this. How two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally could choose to tear me down instead. I missed the idea of having parents. Not them. Their laughter laced with criticism, their smiles hiding sharp edges. But the fantasy of family. I grieved for something I never really had. One afternoon, as I graded papers at the kitchen table, my phone buzzed. It was a message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in months. "I just want you to know. We see the truth now. They pushed too far." The words settled over me like a balm. Not everyone had turned away. Some people had seen through the stories, the performances, the lies. A few weeks later, at a family gathering I didn't attend, I heard from Aunt Claire that people had stopped inviting Martha and Gerald, that their circle had shrunk. "Your mom says you've poisoned everyone against her," Claire told me. But I hadn't said a word. They had done that all on their own. In the evenings when the kids had gone to bed, I'd sit by the fireplace with Grant. The quiet between us no longer heavy, but restful. Some nights the ache still surfaced, the longing for a mother's approval, a father's protection. The kind of love my children received without question. But I knew now, I couldn't change them. I couldn't heal their broken parts. All I could do was break the chain. On a cold Saturday morning in late February, I stood on the front porch, a mug of coffee warming my hands. Maisie and Finn laughed in the yard, bundled in coats and scarves, chasing each other across the patchy snow. Grant stepped outside, slipping an arm around my shoulders. "They're happy," he said softly. I nodded, watching our children's joy fill the air like sunlight breaking through clouds. "They're safe," I added. That was enough. There is no next chapter. This is where I finally chose peace. Before I close this story, I want to leave you with something. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that family isn't who shares your blood. Family is who shows up, who loves without conditions, who protects your peace instead of destroying it. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to love us the most are the very ones who hurt us the deepest. And when that happens, we're faced with an impossible choice. Do we keep shrinking ourselves to fit their idea of who we should be? Or do we stand up and break the cycle? I chose peace. I chose my children. I chose myself. And if you're watching this today, wondering whether you're wrong for setting boundaries, let me be clear. You are not. You deserve love that doesn't come with conditions. You deserve to be free from anyone who makes you feel small. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever felt like you had to fight for your worth in your own family? Or maybe you've had to walk away from someone you thought you couldn't live without. Tell me in the comments below. If this story touched you, drop it in the comments, or just let me know where you're watching from. I read every single one. And if you want to hear more true stories like this, that make you think, heal, and grow, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. If this video spoke to your heart, hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss the next story. Because sometimes hearing someone else's story might just help you rewrite your own. Hi there, I'm Selena. You know, most families celebrate birthdays with cake and candles. Mine put me and my 7-year-old son up for sale for $20,000. Yeah, you heard that right. On her birthday, my own sister auctioned us off like we were nothing but property. But what hurts more isn't that night. It's everything they did before that. They took my home. They stole my father's will. They tried to take my son away. And the worst part? They almost made me believe I deserved it. But what they didn't know is how far I was willing to go to protect my son. The grand ballroom at the Fairmont shimmered under chandeliers, laughter bouncing off marble walls, thick with perfume and polite pretense. Everyone here belonged, except me. I stood by the entrance, smoothing the wrinkles from my borrowed navy dress, my fingers wrapped around Caleb's small hand. My son glanced up at me, wide-eyed. "Mom, why is everyone looking at us like that?" he whispered. "Because we're different," I said, forcing a smile. We moved quietly along the wall, past clusters of designer gowns and sharp suits. Whispers followed us. Judgment, mockery. It wasn't new. At the front table, my mother, Vivian, sat straight-backed and flawless. She didn't look at me. No smile, no nod. I shouldn't have expected one. I couldn't remember the last time she looked at me with pride. Maybe when I was 10. A server passed with a tray of champagne. I waved him off. I couldn't afford to lose composure tonight. Not in front of Caleb. The music faded. Delilah, my younger sister, strutted onto the stage. The golden child, dressed in a champagne-colored gown like it was made for her. The crowd clapped. "Thank you all for coming," she purred. "It's not every day a girl turns 34 and looks this fabulous." Laughter rippled around us, hollow and practiced. Caleb shifted beside me, tugging his too small jacket. "Can we go home soon?" "Just a little longer," I murmured. Delilah lifted her glass. "Before dessert, I have a special surprise." My stomach tightened. "Since we're all about giving back tonight," she smiled sweetly, "I thought it would be fun to hold a charity auction. And guess who's up for grabs?" She turned toward me, her smile sharp. "Me and my darling sister Selena, and her adorable son." The room burst into shocked laughter, murmurs and cameras. Someone in the back shouted, "I'll throw in $100 for the kid's dimples!" The crowd howled. I froze. Caleb's fingers dug into mine, shaking. His face crumpled, confused, scared. I thought of last Thanksgiving, when we ate alone while they posted photos of a lavish dinner, without us. Of Christmas mornings when Caleb asked why Grandma never sent a gift. Vivian and Delilah had spent years making me feel small. But tonight, as they laughed and snapped photos, something inside me shifted. Not like glass breaking, but like a lock clicking open. If they thought they could sell me and my son tonight, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The night outside was thick with silence when I unlocked the door to our apartment in South Austin. Only the distant hum of traffic slipped through the cracked window panes. Caleb walked in without a word, his small shoulders hunched like he was carrying the whole night on his back. He didn't look at me, just headed straight to his room and quietly shut the door. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at that closed door, my chest tight. My purse hung from my arm, the party invitation still crumpled at the bottom. I pulled it out, smoothing the creases like I could erase what happened tonight. But no matter how flat I made it, I could still hear their laughter. The auction. My own sister putting me and my son up for sale. I tossed the invitation onto the table and walked into the kitchen. The light above felt cold. I grabbed a glass, filled it with water, but didn't drink. My phone vibrated in my bag. I already knew what it was. A post from Delilah Rayner. A glossy photo of her at the party captioned, "Charity starts at home. Sometimes you have to clean house." The comments flooded in. "Such a queen." Selena's so bitter. That poor kid. I scrolled past them, forcing myself to breathe. This wasn't new. Delilah always knew how to humiliate me. Last year, it wasn't a party. It was a photo of me and Caleb on her feed, me in my cafe uniform, hair messy, walking him home from school. Her caption, "Support struggling single moms, here's Exhibit A." The text poured in after. "Are you okay? Need money?" They didn't know she was mocking me. I tried to shake the memory, but another one crept in. The letter from Caleb's school. I walked to the drawer by the fridge and pulled it out. The paper was soft from how many times I'd folded and unfolded it. It was from Vivian. She'd written the board herself, claimed I was unstable, said I wasn't fit to raise a child. She convinced them to revoke Caleb's scholarship, the one shot he had at a better future. I could still see his face the day I told him he couldn't go back. He didn't cry. He just folded up the acceptance letter and said, "It's okay, Mom. Maybe next time." I folded the school's letter again, but it felt heavier now, weighted with years of betrayal. In the kitchen mirror, I caught my reflection. Tired eyes, tight jaw, shoulders heavy with every insult, every cut. For years, I thought if I stayed quiet, worked hard, raised Caleb right, they'd finally see me. But tonight proved something else. They didn't want to see me. They wanted me broken. I leaned on the counter, pressing my palms flat until the ache in my chest sharpened into something clearer. "They want me to break," I whispered, "but they've forgotten how much I've survived." The sunlight creeping through the blinds felt cold. It only made the weight from last night heavier. I moved quietly through the apartment, careful not to wake Caleb, not that he was really sleeping. He sat at the small table, crayon in hand, scratching at paper without much effort. At the stove, I stirred oatmeal we didn't want. The silence pressed on me. When I set the bowl in front of him, he mumbled, "Thanks, Mom," without looking up. That thank you cut deeper than it should have. For a while, the only sound was the scrape of his spoon, then soft, "Mom, why does Aunt Delilah hate us so much?" I froze. His small face was drawn tight with confusion. "It's not about you, baby," I said quietly. "It's about them." He nodded like he understood, but I knew he couldn't. He was 7. He shouldn't have to carry this. As I cleared the table, my mind drifted, back to when the cracks first showed. We were still in East Austin then, living in the old Rayner house. It wasn't much, but it was home. Until the letter, taped to the front door on a Tuesday afternoon. A legal notice. Vivian and Delilah had sold the house without telling me. I had 2 weeks to leave. When I called my mother, demanding why, her voice was sharp and cold. "You've been living on borrowed time, Selena. Be grateful we let you stay that long." 2 weeks. That was all I was worth to them. I remembered Caleb sitting among boxes asking, "Why don't Grandma and Auntie want us here?" What was I supposed to say? That they'd tossed us aside like trash? We packed up our lives and landed here, in this cramped apartment that never felt like home. I shook off the memory, but the bitterness lingered. Caleb's crayon stopped moving. "Mom," he said quietly, "when Grandma visited my school, was she telling the truth?" My stomach dropped. "When was this?" "A couple months ago, at lunch. She said, you made everyone hate you, that you ruined everything." The words punched the air from my lungs. No one told me she'd been near him. No teacher, no call. She hadn't just humiliated me. She'd gone after him. "She said you're why we don't have a family anymore." In his eyes, I saw it. A small crack, a seed of doubt. I knelt beside him, taking his hands. "None of that is true," I said firmly. "None of this is your fault, and it's not mine either." He nodded, but I knew the question still lingered. When he finally shuffled back to his room, closing the door behind him, something in me hardened. They weren't just trying to tear me down anymore. They wanted to break him, and I wasn't going to let them. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, letting the silence settle before I whispered to the empty kitchen. "If they want a war, I'll show them how a mother fights." 2 weeks had passed, but the weight in my chest hadn't lifted. Each morning felt heavier, each night a battlefield in my head. But today felt different. I stood outside the tall glass doors of Graham Weston's law office, the Texas sun glaring off the polished windows. The city bustled around me, but inside, I was still and sharp. When I stepped in, the cool air smelled faintly of paper and coffee. Graham was already waiting behind his desk, suit crisp, expression serious. "Selena," he greeted, "come in. I think it's time you knew what they've been hiding." I sat down, my hands tight in my lap. "Whatever it is," I said quietly, "I'm ready." He slid a thick folder across the desk. I opened it, skimming the pages until his voice broke the silence. "Your mother and sister," he said, "have filed a petition to void your father's will." My stomach twisted. On what grounds? "They're claiming Arthur Rayner was mentally unfit, that he was manipulated, that you coerced him." The lie hit like a slap. "My father wasn't weak," I said. "They know that." Graham nodded. "They're trying to block you and Caleb from inheriting everything." Anger rose in me, hot and sharp. But then he added, "What they don't know is that your father prepared a second will. The real one. I'm the executor." I stared at him. "What?" He nodded. "Arthur left 85% of the estate to you and Caleb, including control of Rayner Realty." My throat tightened. Why didn't he tell me? "He wanted to protect you. He knew what your mother and sister were capable of." I looked down at the papers, the weight of them sinking in. It wasn't about money. It was about the one person who'd quietly believed in me. For a moment, I saw my father again, teaching me how to balance a checkbook at the kitchen table. His voice in my ear. "You're stronger than you know." Even after death, he was still fighting for me. I drew in a breath, steadying myself. "So, what's our next move?" Graham met my eyes. "We can challenge their petition. We have the real will, but it'll get ugly." I nodded. "I don't care if it's messy. I want you to send them a formal notice." He raised a brow. "A notice?" "Yes," I said. "Tell them I'm done being their victim. If they don't back off, I'll take everything they've stolen, publicly and legally." For the first time, Graham smiled. "Understood." As I stood, I glanced out the window at the city moving below. "They've crossed every line," I murmured. "I'll draw the last one." A month passed. A month of silence, but I knew better than to trust it. So when the invitation landed in my inbox, an elegant PDF dressed in gold script, I didn't flinch. The Rayner Foundation Charity Gala, supporting single mothers across Texas, signed by Delilah Rayner. A slap in the face disguised as kindness. I stared at it for a moment, then clicked RSVP. If she wanted me there, I'd show up on my terms. The night of the gala, I stood outside the Austin Museum of Arts, adjusting the strap of my black dress. It wasn't designer, but it fit better than anything Delilah owned, because I didn't need a label to stand tall. Inside, the grand hall glittered with lights and fake smiles. Waiters moved between crowds, champagne flutes in hand. The same faces who'd whispered behind my back for years were all here. And at the center of it all, Delilah. She stood on stage, laughing like she ran the world. When her eyes met mine, her smile tightened, daring me to react. I kept mine polite, neutral, but I was already 10 steps ahead. The music faded as she took the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began sweetly, "tonight is about giving back. About lifting those less fortunate, those who made poor choices." Laughter rippled through the room. Beside me, Graham leaned in. "You don't have to stay." I shook my head. "I'm not going anywhere." Delilah's voice dripped with sugar and venom. Single mothers face many struggles. Sometimes, those struggles come from within, from poor decisions, from unstable behavior. The crowd chuckled, eyes flicking toward me. "And tonight," she smiled, "we want to help people like my sister, to prove even the broken can be saved." More laughter. My pulse roared in my ears, but I waited. When the Kwanda opened, I raised my hand. Her smile flickered. "Ah, my sister, a question?" I took the mic, voice calm. "I think it's great we're here to talk about charity," I said. "But charity isn't a game. It's not about who can humiliate their family the loudest." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "You can raise all the money you want, Delilah," I added, meeting her eyes. "But real charity would be leaving your family alone." Silence. Her smile slipped, just enough for me to see the fury behind it. I handed back the mic and walked out. Outside, the night air felt lighter. Graham joined me on the steps. You know she won't stop now. I nodded. Good, I said quietly, because neither will I. I looked back at the glittering hall behind me. They thought tonight was the fight. It was only the beginning. 2 weeks after the gala, the storm I'd been waiting for finally arrived, not with a knock, but with 2 thick envelopes shoved under my door, one signed by Vivienne, the other by Delilah. I sat at the kitchen table, my heart pounding as I read. Vivienne was petitioning to void my father's will, accusing me of manipulating him when he was weak. Delilah's envelope was worse. She was filing for full custody of Caleb. My hands trembled, but I pressed the papers flat, forcing myself to breathe. Of course they came for me together. The next day, I sat across from Graham, the documents spread between us like a war map. Your mother claims your father wasn't of sound mind when he signed the will, he said quietly. They're accusing you of coercion. I let out a bitter laugh. She's rewriting history, classic. Graham slid the second petition toward me. Delilah wants custody of Caleb. She's submitted records, doctored messages, trying to paint you as unstable. My jaw tightened. She doesn't want him. She just wants to win. He nodded. This isn't about Caleb. It's about power. The next week blurred. A storm of court filings, affidavits, emergency hearings. My bank accounts were frozen. My name smeared across headlines. Unstable heiress under investigation. It all came to a head at Austin Family Court, under cold lights and colder stares. Delilah stood across the hallway when I arrived, red lipstick sharp as a blade. Nice of you to show up, she said sweetly. The judge won't like what he sees. I met her gaze. You're not here for Caleb. You're here because you can't stand that I won't break. Her smile faltered. Everyone breaks eventually. Inside, her lawyer ripped me apart, painting me unfit, unstable, irresponsible. Lies stacked like bricks around me. When court adjourned, Graham and I stepped into the hot afternoon air. They're not backing down, he said. They want to leave you with nothing. I nodded, stomach churning. Then we stopped playing nice. That night, after Caleb had fallen asleep, small and safe under his blanket, I stood by his door and made a promise. No more mercy, I whispered to the dark. You'll never be their pawn again. 2 weeks into the custody hearing, I sat at the kitchen table, nursing cold coffee, when my phone rang. It was Graham. You need to come to the office, he said, now. The urgency in his voice made my stomach drop. 40 minutes later, I walked into his office and froze. Carter Blake, my father's oldest friend, a man I hadn't seen in over a decade. He looked older, thinner, but his sharp eyes hadn't changed. You should sit down, Carter said quietly. Graham slid a thick folder toward me, but Carter spoke first. I've stayed quiet too long, he began. But watching what Vivienne and Delilah are doing to you, I can't anymore. My pulse quickened as Carter laid out the truth. Years ago, Vivienne and Delilah had isolated my father, cutting him off from friends, allies, even me. They controlled his meetings, his money, every interaction. They fed him lies until he believed I didn't care. They made sure Arthur thought you abandoned him, Carter said. He handed me proof, financial records, emails, statements. The paper trail was clear. Manipulation, coercion, betrayal. They hadn't just cut me from the will. They'd erased me from his life. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Graham's voice broke through. We can use this, in court and in the public eye. I closed the folder carefully, like it might break. Then let's use it all. The next day, Carter's sworn testimony was filed, but I wanted more. I gave an interview. Just one clear statement. I will not let lies rewrite my father's story or my son's future. It provoked them, just like I knew it would. That evening, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Delilah had gone live everywhere. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Her tear-streaked face filled the screen, her voice trembling. My sister's trying to steal everything our father built, she cried. She manipulated him when he was dying. She's tearing our family apart for money. The video went viral. The comments poured in. Greedy witch. Poor Delilah. She's always been the better sister. I turned off my phone. Minutes later, Graham called. You okay? I stared out at the dark Austin skyline, the weight of it all pressing on me. They've lit the match, I said softly. Let's burn down their lies. The last Friday of June, Austin was already sweltering when I arrived at Travis County Family Court. The Texas sun glared against the courthouse windows, but it wasn't the heat that made my skin prickle. The courthouse steps were a circus. Reporters crowded the entrance, microphones shoved forward like weapons, cameras flashing. I ignored them. Graham walked beside me, steady as ever, and Caleb held my hand tightly. His small fingers curled around mine like a lifeline. Behind us, I could hear the hurried click of heels. Vivian arrived first, cold and composed. Delilah followed minutes later, her usual swagger absent, sunglasses covering her face. Inside the courtroom, the air felt heavier than the weight of all the eyes watching us. When the judge entered, the room fell silent. After thorough review of submitted evidence, including the original testament of Arthur Rayner, financial records, and sworn testimony from Carter Blake, the judge began, voice even but firm. This court finds no credible basis to invalidate Mr. Rayner's will. A murmur ran through the crowd. My pulse thundered in my ears. The court further finds, the judge continued, that deliberate attempts were made to manipulate Mr. Rayner's estate and alienate Miss Selina Rayner from her rightful inheritance. I glanced at Vivian, whose jaw was tight, lips pressed into a thin line. The court upholds Arthur Rayner's last will and testament, the judge finished. Selina Rayner and her son Caleb Rayner are the legal heirs of the Rayner estate and company assets. The relief that washed over me wasn't sweet. It was sharp, edged with the bitterness of everything it cost to get here. Before I could exhale, the judge shifted papers and continued. Regarding the custody petition submitted by Miss Delilah Rayner, he said, the court finds the petition not only baseless, but malicious. Delilah sat frozen, her face draining of color. The evidence presented demonstrates an intentional effort to undermine Miss Selina Rayner's ability to parent her son. Such behavior constitutes psychological harassment. My throat tightened. The judge looked directly at me. Miss Rayner, he said gently, you are the only parent this boy needs. For the first time in weeks, my shoulders eased. The gavel came down like thunder, final and irreversible. Outside the courtroom, Graham handed Vivian's attorney a formal notice. Accounts frozen, restitution owed. Delilah stood a few feet away, her sunglasses now gone, eyes red-rimmed but not from tears. She approached quietly. Selina, can we talk? I met her gaze, but there was nothing left to say, not after everything. You already said enough, I replied, and so did the court. I turned away before she could answer, walking toward the exit where Caleb waited. The media's shouting followed us outside, but I didn't care. The only voice I heard was my son's as he took my hand. Mom, he asked softly, does this mean it's over? I gave his hand a small squeeze. For now. The September sun streamed through the tall windows of my new office, warm and gentle. For the first time in years, the light didn't feel harsh. It felt earned. On my desk sat a simple plaque, CEO Selina Rayner. Beside it, a silver frame held a photo of Caleb, grinning wide, a front tooth missing, his tiny baseball glove in hand. I traced the edge of the frame and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. 3 months had passed since the court battle ended. 3 months since the noise, headlines, and betrayals faded. But some heaviness remained. Not like chains, but like old bruises you forget about until you touch them. Outside my door, my assistant's voice came through. Selina, they're here. I stood, smoothing my navy blazer. Vivian and Delilah waited in the conference room. They didn't look like the women I once knew. Vivian's hair had thinned, streaked with gray. She wore plain clothes now, no pearls or designer labels. Delilah sat stiffly beside her, eyes hollow, lips tight, the shine of her curated life gone. The room was quiet when I walked in. Vivian spoke first. Selina, I know we don't deserve to be here. Her voice cracked, but there was no pretense. I'm sorry. Delilah glanced up, her eyes wet but guarded. I didn't realize how far we'd gone until there was nothing left. Once I would have wanted to scream at them, rage at what they'd done. Instead, I sat down and spoke evenly. I can't forget what you did. I won't pretend it never happened. They nodded. But I can choose to let go of the anger. I slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents securing Vivian modest housing and financial support, enough to live without fear but nothing more. "There's one condition," I said. "You will not contact Caleb, not until he decides he wants to see you." Vivian swallowed hard. Delilah wiped at her eyes. "We understand," Vivian said quietly. When they left, Graham stepped in with paperwork in hand. "That was generous," he said. "It wasn't for them," I replied. "It was for me." That night, I sat at the edge of Caleb's bed. He was half asleep, face soft under the nightlight. "Mom," he mumbled, "are we safe now?" I brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. "We've always been safe," I whispered, "because we have each other." Outside, the moon stretched across the Austin skyline. For the first time in a long while, I let myself believe in something simple: peace. Before we end, let me leave you with this, because if you've followed this story, you deserve more than just an ending. For years, I believed family meant staying quiet, shrinking myself, hoping they'd finally see me. But sometimes, the people who should love you most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. This isn't just a story about betrayal or courtrooms. It's about knowing your worth when others try to strip it away. It's about teaching your children and yourself that you are not for sale. Your voice, your future, your dignity belong to you. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever fought a battle no one else saw? Had to choose between silence and standing tall? If this story spoke to you, drop a or comment, "I'm standing strong" below, and tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't, tell me why. Your voice matters here. Hit subscribe if you want more stories that remind you of your own strength. Hi there, I'm Anselma. I found out my dad left $2 million to my sister in his will, and I got nothing. No explanation, no warning, just erased. But the truth? That was just the beginning. They drained my bank accounts, used my name for loans, spread lies behind my back, and when I finally stood up for myself, they said I was the problem. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a pattern, one that had been building quietly for years. What would you do if the people who raised you turned you into a stranger in your own story? Would you stay quiet, or would you fight back? Let's talk about it. The paper didn't even look important at first, just another envelope in a messy pile of tax forms, warranties, and junk mail. I'd come over to help my dad sort through it all, like I always did every October. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon in Fort Collins, the kind of day that makes the trees look like they're on fire with gold and rust. My parents' house, warm and cluttered with memories, smelled like old candles and cinnamon. Familiar, harmless. I wasn't expecting to be blindsided. While I was flipping through the stack, looking for property tax documents, I saw the title, Last Will and Testament. For a moment, I froze, because wills aren't something you just stumble across like takeout menus. I opened it without thinking, curiosity outweighing etiquette. It took 3 lines to stop my breath. Everything, every last dollar, every inch of the house, every piece of my parents' assets was going to Verlies. Not one word about me, not a single acknowledgement of the years I helped them pay that mortgage when Dad's back went out, or the groceries I delivered after Mom's surgery, or the late-night phone calls I answered, walking them through online banking. Nothing. I kept reading, thinking maybe I missed a page. There had to be a mention, some token of appreciation, but no, just a single generic sentence near the end. "We leave this with equal love for both our daughters." Equal love? I felt like a damn fool. I set the will aside without reacting. Dad came back into the room a few minutes later, sipping from his mug, and asked, "Find the tax doc?" "Not yet," I said, smiling so tight it felt like my face might crack. It wasn't the moment to blow up. I needed to process this quietly first, and maybe part of me still hoped there was a reasonable explanation. A mistake. Something that would make sense when I wasn't sitting there with betrayal tangled around my ribs like barbed wire. But 2 days later, the second blow landed. My phone rang while I was reviewing a client's retirement plan at the office. It was Mom. "Hi, honey," she cooed. "Listen, we've hit a little snag this month. Would you be able to send us $1,500 just to cover the utility bills and a couple other things? I hesitated for all of 2 seconds before saying, yeah, of course. I transferred the money during my lunch break. It wasn't unusual, they'd asked before and I always came through. But that night, while I was half watching a crime doc on Netflix and scrolling through Instagram, I saw Verlice's story. She was at La Mer, that overpriced spa up near Boulder. Robes, wine, massage oils, soft lighting, and the caption, "Self-care is the best care pre-holiday reset." My stomach turned. I tapped through more photos. Sushi, champagne, candles. So that's where the utility bills went. At first, I told myself I must be wrong. Coincidence, timing. But I knew better. I knew what this was. They weren't just ignoring me, they were using me. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, I sat with it. I sat with the weight of what I now understood. That I was the reliable one, the useful one, not the loved one. That night I drove home in silence. The sky was already dark by 6, and the cold was starting to bite through my coat. Inside my apartment, I poured myself a glass of wine and curled up on the couch. Across from me, on the bookshelf, was a photo of me and Verlice as kids, matching dresses, arms around each other. The glass frame had a tiny crack in the top corner. I'd meant to fix it. Now I just stared at it, and for the first time, I let myself feel it. This wasn't about money. It never was. This was about being erased. It had been 3 days since I read the will, since the spa photos, since the reality hit like a slap in the face. I hadn't said anything to anyone, not a single word to my parents, not even to Verlice. I went to work. I smiled at clients. I returned emails. I even laughed when my coworker Trina made some joke about her chaotic Thanksgiving plans. But every laugh, every smile, every nod, it was all muscle memory. Inside, I was unraveling in silence. It was a rainy Wednesday evening when my father called. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, still in my work clothes, nursing a cup of lukewarm tea I'd forgotten about. The window beside me blurred with soft droplets, and the light in my room was dim, muted, like the rest of me. "Hi, Dad," I answered, my voice more flat than I intended. He didn't ask how I was. No chit-chat. He got right to it. "About what you saw last weekend." His voice was too even, too rehearsed. "It's more complicated than you think." I didn't respond. I waited. "Your mother and we thought it was best. Verlice, she's had a harder time. You've always been strong. Independent?" There it was, the narrative, the same old script. "You're stable," he continued. "She's not. You don't need it like she does." I pressed the phone tighter against my ear. My jaw locked so hard it hurt. I closed my eyes and felt a thud behind them, the ache of restraint. "That's your justification?" I asked, voice calm, too calm. "It's not about love, Anselma. You know we love you." I almost laughed, but it would have come out wrong, too bitter, too broken. "We're done here," I said softly, and hung up. I didn't cry, I didn't throw the phone. I just sat there letting the words settle in like wet cement. Not needed. Not deserving. Not included. I'd been demoted from daughter to utility. Reliable, silent, and ultimately replaceable. Later that night, I pulled out an old shoebox from my closet. Inside were scrapbooks and birthday cards, old letters, silly notes from middle school. I flipped through the pages slowly, my fingers tracing the edges of memories that now felt artificial. One photo stood out, Verlice crying after losing a 6th grade spelling bee. I remembered that day. I'd placed second. Dad had told me to let her win, just this once. She was sensitive, and I was mature enough to understand. I had nodded. I always nodded. In high school, I got into the state honors program. At the celebration dinner, all the attention went to Verlice getting a C+ in Algebra 2. "She worked so hard," Mom gushed. No one even mentioned my name. And still, I believed I was lucky to be seen as the strong one. I wore that label like a medal, thinking it meant they respected me. Turns out it meant they felt they could take me for granted. The next evening, just as I was making dinner, my phone buzzed with a call from Claire, my cousin. She rarely called. We mostly exchanged birthday texts and heart reacts on Facebook posts. I answered with polite curiosity. "Hey," she said hesitantly, I was just checking in. Heard things got weird at your parents' house. Weird? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Yeah, well, my mom mentioned something about the will. I didn't want to pry, but Uncle Cadrian always used to say you were doing fine on your own. That Verlisa needed more help. I paused, spatula still in hand. So he's been saying that for a while, huh? Claire exhaled slowly. Honestly? Yeah, I think they meant well, but… There was no but that would fix it. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd deliberately chosen not to include me. They weren't confused. They weren't misguided. They agreed. I finished cooking, plated the pasta, and left it on the counter. I didn't eat. I wasn't hungry anymore. That night, I stood in front of the gallery wall in my hallway, the one with a dozen framed photos of family vacations, birthdays, holidays. I stared at the picture of my parents and me at Niagara Falls. Then I took it down. One by one, I removed every photo that had their faces in it. I didn't burn them. I didn't shred them. I just put them in a box and slid it under my bed. I wanted space. I wanted air. I wanted something that didn't echo their voices every time I looked at it. I picked up my journal. The pages smelled faintly of lavender from a sachet I tucked between them months ago. I opened to a clean page and wrote, "What do you call a family that never actually saw you?" A week passed, but nothing really changed. At least, not on the outside. I still went to work. I still replied to emails. I still smiled at the receptionist in the elevator. But I felt like a guest in my own body, like someone else had stepped into my skin and forgotten how to move around in it. It was a Sunday morning when I opened Instagram out of habit. I was sipping coffee by the window, watching the sun push through the clouds without warming anything, bright but cold, like a spotlight on something I didn't want to see. Verlise had posted a new photo. Throwback with my rock, my everything, dad goals. It was her and my father, arm in arm, both smiling in front of the lake near Estes Park. The colors had been filtered, softened, like some perfect Hallmark moment. But something felt off. It took me a second, and then I saw it. There was space behind Dad's shoulder, an awkward crop on the left side of the image. A strange floating edge of light that didn't belong. I knew that photo. I had it too. I pulled out my old backup drive and connected it to my laptop. The folder labeled Family Photos hadn't been touched in months. When I found the original file, I clicked it open. There I was, standing on the other side of Dad, smiling like I belonged. The original photo had 3 people. The one she posted had 2. They'd cut me out, not metaphorically, not emotionally, literally, cropped, removed, erased. I stared at the screen, hands frozen on the keyboard, coffee cooling beside me. For a long time, I didn't move. I just stared at the difference between truth and narrative. And then I laughed. A low, stunned laugh that didn't reach my chest. Later that day, I opened a different folder. Milestones. Graduation, promotions, birthdays. I scanned through the images, looking for patterns I'd never noticed before. And I saw them. Dozens of them. Photos where I stood just out of frame, where eyes looked past me, where conversations swirled around me like I was decoration, not blood. I remembered my college graduation, how I'd won a full ride to an Ivy League, and how at the family dinner, all anyone talked about was Verlise landing her first job interview. Not the job, the interview. "You're the strong one," Mom had said that night. "You don't need the spotlight. You shine on your own." At the time, it felt like love. Now it sounded like dismissal. Like she was saying, "Don't expect anything. You already give too much." I opened a drawer and found one of the photo albums from when we were kids. Inside, a picture of the 4 of us at the Grand Canyon. Everyone smiling. But now I noticed, Dad's arm was around Verlise, not me. Mom's hand rested on her shoulder. I stood next to them, smiling just the same, but not touched, not claimed. Maybe it had always been this way. Maybe I just didn't want to see it. By late afternoon, the sun had dipped lower behind the apartment buildings, and I sat at my desk, flipping through those photos over and over, looking for something I'd missed, hoping for one image where I felt chosen. I didn't find one. Instead, I opened my email, not to send anything, just to type. Subject: when you erased me. I stared at the blinking cursor for several minutes before I started writing. I didn't know if I'd ever send it. That didn't matter. I just needed the words to exist somewhere outside my body, because now I knew they weren't just choosing her. They were rewriting a family without me in it. Wednesday came with drizzle and bone-deep cold. I wrapped my scarf tighter as I walked through the parking structure and into my office building. Our floor smelled like burnt coffee and fluorescent lights. I liked the routine here. Numbers didn't play favorites, forecasts didn't pretend, spreadsheets didn't crop you out of memories. I was halfway through reviewing a client's portfolio, 2 monitors glowing in front of me, my attention zoned in, when the internal line rang. I rarely got calls on that one. I paused, pressed the speaker button. "Anselma?" It was Lainey at reception. Her voice trembled. "Your family's here. They say it's urgent." I sat still for a beat, the word family rattling in my ribs. "Did they say why?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "They wouldn't say, but they won't leave." My hand hovered over the mouse for a moment. Then I stood. "I'll come down." As I descended in the elevator, my reflection in the mirrored walls looked calm, unbothered. But inside, my stomach curled into knots. They weren't supposed to come here. This was my space, professional, clean, untouched by the mess I'd left in my personal life. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and there they were. Dad, arms crossed, face tight with expectation. Mom in her familiar beige coat and faux sympathetic smile. And Verlice, of course. Perfect hair, perfect posture, eyes scanning the room like she was the guest of honor. They stood in a line, like some kind of intervention. I approached slowly. They turned in unison. "You can't ignore us forever," Dad said first, skipping any pretense of affection. Mom's voice was soft, like she was trying to soothe a wild animal. "Sweetheart, we just want to talk. Don't make this bigger than it is." I took a breath, steady but low. "You already made it bigger," I said, eyes locked on her. "When you decided I wasn't your daughter anymore." There was a flicker behind her eyes. Discomfort? Guilt? Hard to say. She adjusted her scarf and looked at Dad, who didn't flinch. "You're being dramatic," Verlice finally chimed in. "It's just a will. You act like it's some kind of betrayal." I laughed, sharp, humorless. "You don't get to rewrite the narrative just because you're comfortable in it." "I didn't ask for anything," she muttered. "No," I replied. "You just took it when it was offered." I turned and walked away, not giving them the drama they came for. Back at my desk, I closed the blinds, sat down, and tried to pretend it was just another afternoon. I managed maybe 10 minutes of focus before the alert pinged on my phone. "Your account ending in **38 has been debited $2,500. My breath caught. I opened the banking app, heart racing. The transaction came from the joint account I had set up for Mom years ago, back when she struggled to manage her medical bills. I'd forgotten it even existed. I scrolled. It was a wire transfer to an upscale event venue. I called the bank immediately. The customer service rep was kind, but the response was clinical. "Unfortunately, since she's a legal co-holder, the transaction is authorized." I hung up slowly, my hands cold despite the heat in the room. That money wasn't just stolen, it was assumed. Taken like it still belonged to them. They'd shown up in my workplace, demanded a conversation, and then, behind my back, reached into my pocket. I opened the group chat we hadn't used in half a year. Their names stared back at me in the top bar: Cadrian, Sorrel, Verlice. I typed slowly, deliberately. "This is the last time you take anything from me without my consent," and I hit send. 2 days later, I was in the kitchen making tea when my phone rang. Unknown number, local area code, but not familiar. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was spam, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Is this Anselma Elmore?" "Yes, speaking." "This is Samantha from Equifax Fraud and Identity Services. We're calling to verify a recent co-signature on a personal line of credit, $12,000, issued last week under your name." The words barely registered at first. Then they hit. "I didn't co-sign anything," I said. A brief pause, followed by quiet typing on the other end. "The application listed your full name and an older residential address. The secondary signer is Sorrel Elmore." My grip tightened on the counter. Steam rose steadily from the kettle behind me. "That's my mother." "I see," she replied, her tone shifting. "So you're not authorizing this transaction?" "No, absolutely not. That's identity fraud." "We'll open an investigation and email you the formal dispute documents," she said. "But please note, because the signer is a known relative and may have had access to previous records, this could be a lengthy process." "Understood," I muttered, already feeling the ground tilt beneath me. I ended the call and just sat down, staring at nothing. 5 full minutes passed before I could even move. The betrayal didn't just sting, it stunned. She hadn't just stepped over a line, she'd crushed it. No text this time, no carefully worded message. I called her. My hands were shaking slightly as the phone rang. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Her voice was soft, light, like she'd been waiting for me. "Sweetheart," she said, like nothing had happened. "I thought you might call." "You used my name to apply for a loan," I said evenly. "You didn't just cross a line. You buried it." She sighed, but didn't deny it. "We needed it. Things are tight right now, and you wouldn't have said yes." "No, I wouldn't have," I snapped, "because it's my name, my credit, my identity. You forged it." "It's not forgery, it's family. Families help each other." "No, families ask, families respect, they don't steal." And I hung up. I didn't yell, didn't cry. I just sat there alone in my kitchen, letting the silence harden around me. If I'd had any illusions left, they ended there. An hour later, my phone lit up again. A text from Verlice. "You're seriously doing all this over a will? Grow up." Then a group message from Mom. "We've done so much for you. This is how you repay us?" No message from Dad, just a reaction on her text. Of course, no guilt, no shame, just deflection. They weren't hiding anymore. They saw themselves as victims. I was the villain for pushing back, for setting limits, for finally saying no. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened Facebook. My page had been quiet for years. Some old work photos, the occasional birthday post, a few likes here and there. But that night, I wrote something real. No accusations, no drama, just facts. For years I gave to my family. I paid for things, kept quiet, and told myself it was love. I ignored the imbalance. I convinced myself that loyalty meant silence. Recently, I found out I was removed from the family will, without discussion or explanation, just gone. Then I discovered a loan taken out in my name, without my permission, co-signed by someone I trusted. I've stayed quiet long enough. They haven't. So here's where I stand. I wasn't just written out of the will, I was written out of the family long before. And I hit post. No name-calling, no revenge, just truth. I didn't check for likes, didn't scroll to see who saw it. That wasn't the point. The point was, I had spoken. Let the truth breathe. Let it live where silence used to be. I was at work early that day. The coffee was burnt, my eyes were heavy, and for once my mind was quiet. Not peaceful, just suspended. I hadn't posted anything since the Facebook fallout. No response from Dad. Verlice vanished. But the silence didn't feel like a break. It felt like pressure, like something was winding up behind the scenes. Around midday, an email popped into my inbox. Reception. You have a letter, hand-delivered, from the law offices of Henry and Clark, signed and sealed. I froze. My chest tightened. I left my desk and headed downstairs. Lainey handed me the envelope with a cautious look, the kind you give someone when you know it's bad but can't say so out loud. The letterhead told me everything. Back at my desk, I sat down, stared at the thick envelope for a second, then opened it. 3 pages. Heavy, glossy paper. The tone was cold, precise. You are being formally warned against sharing private family information with malicious intent on public platforms. The client? Sorrel Elmore, my mother. I read that line again. She hadn't called, hadn't written. No apology, no explanation, just lawyers. Threats, paper over pain. She wasn't trying to speak to me. She wanted to silence me. They weren't negotiating. They were drawing a line. I read the entire thing, slowly, twice. I didn't flinch. I just pulled out the office scanner, fed in the pages, and saved the files in a folder labeled Defense. No reply, no panic, just evidence. That night, I sat by the window with a glass of water. Snow was falling hard now, dancing under the orange glow of the street lamps. The city felt distant, wrapped in hush. I was drained, but sharp. The fog was gone. Then my phone lit up. A message from Nina, an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in months. "Hey, did you actually say those things about your mom on that call?" My stomach dropped. "What call?" I texted back. She replied with an audio file. I hesitated, then hit play. My voice, but wrong, off. Clipped sentences, choppy edits. The rhythm was weird, the tone mismatched. A manipulative liar who doesn't deserve the title of mother. I never said that, ever. The call was a Frankenstein version of something real. Our last conversation. Chopped up and rearranged. It was me, but not me. Someone had stitched together a character assassination. I messaged her back immediately. "That's fake, badly edited. I have the full call saved, start to finish." Nina didn't answer right away. I could picture her staring at her phone, caught between what she heard and what she knew. That's what they were counting on. Doubt. Confusion. They didn't need to prove I was a liar. Just enough to make me look unstable. I pulled up the files. Audio backups of everything. The full call with Mom. The one with Verlies. I had them all. Documented, date-stamped, saved for reasons just like this. In the quiet, I opened a new doc and started writing a timeline. From the will, to the account transfers, to the gaslighting, to this. Every twist, every threat, every trap. I added receipts, screenshots, dates. I opened folders, labeled everything, cross-referenced timestamps, built the scaffolding of a truth they didn't want seen. Outside, the snow had coated the fire escape, thick and undisturbed. They thought sending lawyers would scare me. They thought splicing my voice would break me. They were wrong. I wasn't going to panic. I wasn't going to yell into the void. I was going to build a case. They called me dangerous for telling the truth. Wait until they saw what I could do with proof. My apartment windows were fogged from the inside, blurred by the condensation that came from days of refusing to open them. The radiator hummed, but the chill had settled beneath my skin and into the soft tissue of my patience. It was the kind of cold that didn't just touch you, it stayed. I was stirring oatmeal mindlessly when I saw the notification pop up on my phone. A neighbor I barely knew had sent a screenshot. No caption, just the image. Fort Collins Family Circle public post. When a daughter turns on her own mother for a few dollars, shameful. My stomach didn't drop, it locked. The first comment? Mrs. Kenna, one of Mom's longtime church friends. She'd braided my hair for a bake sale when I was 9. I raised 3 girls. None of them would ever disrespect me like that. Prayers to Sorrel. And then, the one that should have surprised me, but still felt like a slap. Verlies. No matter what, I'll always choose love over greed. I froze mid-bite. The oatmeal turned cold in my bowl. It wasn't just the words that hit, it was what came after, or rather, what didn't. The people who had quietly liked my Facebook post 2 weeks ago, the ones who'd messaged me in private, who said they understood, none of them showed up now. Not one public defense, not one counter-comment. Their silence buzzed louder than any insult. By afternoon, the group chat with the family had once again lit up. This time, it wasn't passive-aggressive. It was direct. From Dad, "If you really loved us, you'd stop airing our business. You're not being a daughter, you're being a problem." A problem. Like I was mold on a wall, a leak under the sink, an inconvenience to be patched over and repainted. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I let out a laugh, dry, hollow, as if it came from somewhere else in the room and not my own body. And then I reached for my journal, the one I hadn't touched in 3 days, and wrote the clearest line I'd ever penned. I wasn't being a daughter, I was being a donor, not family, just function. That evening, as I was organizing receipts, Claire called. Her voice was hushed, like she wasn't supposed to be making the call, like the truth itself needed to be whispered. "And Selma, I need to tell you something. I should have said it earlier." I sat on the edge of my bed, the phone pressed to my ear like it might burn. "Your mom knew about the will, from the beginning. She told the family it was for the best, that you wouldn't understand." The room fell quiet. Even my heartbeat seemed to step aside. "She told everyone not to bring it up with you, said it would only cause trouble." I didn't ask for proof. I didn't doubt her. I didn't need to. Because I'd always suspected that Mom stood in the hallway between betrayal and protection, that she might have been manipulated. But this? She wasn't caught in the crossfire. She was holding the rifle. I thanked Claire. I don't remember the tone of my voice, but I do remember hanging up and sitting there, still, my hands folded in my lap like I was waiting for something, judgment perhaps, or maybe the sudden weightlessness that comes when a foundation completely collapses. But no such freedom arrived. Later that week, on my way home from work, I stopped by the Safeway to pick up a few things. The air outside was sharp with wind, snowflakes dancing sideways under the parking lot lights. That's when I saw her, Verlies, standing next to the flower stand, holding her phone like it was an award. She glanced up, saw me, and smirked. "So," she said, brushing snow from her shoulder, "how's your little pity parade going?" There was no audience here, no church members, no family friends. Just her, just me. She waited for me to snap, to defend, to make a scene. But I didn't. I stepped closer, met her eyes, and said calmly, "You may have their will, but I have their truth, and I'm about to make it public." Her smirk wavered, just a twitch, but enough for me. I walked inside without another glance. She didn't follow. I picked up a carton of milk, paid in cash, and stepped back into the cold. The wind stung my cheeks, but I didn't flinch. They had tried to bury me. But they'd forgotten something important. I'd grown roots in concrete. 2 mornings after seeing Verlies outside Safeway, I woke up before sunrise. The sky outside my bedroom window was a soft, indifferent gray. Still, the cold felt different that day, less numbing, more clarifying, like something in the air had shifted, or maybe it was just me. At 7:12 a.m., while sipping from my chipped ceramic mug, the one I kept out of stubbornness, I saw the email notification on my phone. Subject: about the Elmore estate. It was from Thorne, not some anonymous attorney. Thorne had been with our family for years. He knew our birthdays, our messes, our milestones. He'd drafted the first version of my dad's will. Now he was writing to me, not as a family friend, but as a lawyer with concerns. "Anselma," the message read, "I have reason to believe the second version of your father's will contains significant discrepancies. Please review the attached documents at your earliest convenience. We need to speak." I opened the file, side-by-side scans. One dated a few months before Dad's health went downhill. My name clearly listed. A third split marked for a local animal shelter. Verlies still got the bulk, but I was there. Then the second document, recent, abrupt, and cold. Verlies's name stood alone. I didn't need to squint to catch the differences. The signature flowed differently. The ink was newer. The notarization stamp lacked its usual county watermark. And the date? It was the same weekend Dad was hospitalized with pneumonia and hallucinating. He couldn't even hold a spoon then, let alone a pen. I stared at the screen, then hit forward to my own attorney. No emotion, just action. Later that afternoon, I met Thorne at his office. A modest building downtown, all warm wood and old brass. He offered coffee. I declined. "I can't officially advise you unless retained," he said. "But off the record, this smells like coercion, or at the very least, a misrepresentation. Also, assigning full estate rights to one party without the spouse's co-signature violates Colorado joint property statutes." I folded my hands in my lap. "So what happens next?" He hesitated. "An inquiry has already been opened. Someone sent documents anonymously to the State Legal Review Board. I assume it wasn't you." I didn't answer, because it didn't matter who'd opened the door. The truth has a way of walking in, uninvited, once there's a crack. That night, I lit one candle and sat at my desk. I didn't write a long post. No hashtags, no callouts, no fire, just a sentence. When they tried to erase me from paper, I wrote myself back in ink. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't enable comments. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed. A message from Verlies. "This is getting out of hand. Take it down. You're humiliating us." I read it once, then again, and then I placed the phone screen down on the table and kept the candle lit. I didn't feel the urge to reply. For the first time, their discomfort wasn't my responsibility. Their silence wasn't suffocating me. It was shielding them from the weight of everything I finally had the power to say. Because here's the thing no one tells you, silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's the final word. Closure isn't always a door slammed. Sometimes it's just you walking away. 3 weeks passed. The snow that once muffled the sidewalks had receded into slush, and even that had dried now, leaving behind faint salt stains on the curbs. The mornings no longer bit at my fingers. Instead, they brushed past them, offering something softer, like the world was thawing alongside me. I hadn't followed the court proceedings, not in real time, not with popcorn or commentary. I didn't need to sit through transcripts or refresh court dockets. I got a summary from Thorne, concise, professional, devoid of sentiment. Kadrian Elmore has been summoned for further inquiry regarding estate irregularities. Sorrel Elmore declined to offer a statement. No apology, no confession, no grand unraveling, just silence, which, oddly enough, felt louder than words. There's a kind of peace that comes when the noise finally dies down, even if it's just from people giving up the act. That morning, instead of diving into social feeds or the endless scroll of takes and hashtags, I grabbed my coat and walked 2 blocks to a small corner cafe I hadn't stepped into in years. The bell above the door still jingled like a memory. The owner, Marta, still wore her hair in that loose silver bun. She blinked, then lit up. "And Selma?" she said. "Where have you been hiding, girl?" I smiled. "Busy rediscovering air." She chuckled and poured me a black coffee without asking. "It's on the house," she said. "You always tip too much." I took my mug to a seat by the window and watched people drift by. Bundled couples, grocery bags, toddlers in puffer jackets. Life didn't wait for the dust to settle. It just kept moving. Maybe I could too. I opened my laptop, not to work, not to scroll, but to write. For the first time in a long time, I logged into my old blog, a relic from college days when I still believed my words might echo somewhere. I titled the post, "Some Truths Don't Need an Audience, Just Air to Breathe." And I wrote. I wrote about grief that doesn't come from death, about losing people who still breathe the same air but feel galaxies away, about how silence from the people you love can feel worse than shouting from strangers. I didn't name them, didn't point fingers or rehash old wounds. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about breath. My own. How I learned to exhale without waiting for someone else's approval. That afternoon, back at the office, I was organizing files when the front desk buzzed. "There's someone here to see you," my assistant said. "She didn't have an appointment." It was Mrs. Delaney. I hadn't seen her in years. Wrinkles had deepened around her eyes, but her posture was upright, determined. "You probably don't remember me," she said, her voice kind but weathered. "You helped me save my home. I never forgot." I did remember. A mess of paperwork, a last-minute refinance, a handwritten thank you card. But I hadn't expected her to walk in years later just to say this. "Thank you," she said again, "for being steady, for not letting me give up." She left after 10 minutes. Nothing dramatic. But when the door shut behind her, I felt something unfamiliar flood my chest. Not pride, not validation, just peace. That night, I got home to find a small cream envelope in my mailbox. No return address. My name was written in soft blue ink, careful cursive. Inside, one line. "You didn't deserve any of it. I'm sorry. Claire." No explanation, no defense, just those words. I didn't text her, didn't forward it to anyone. I folded the note and slid it into the back of my journal. Not to forgive, not to forget, just to witness it. Because sometimes acknowledgement matters more than apology. Later, I lit a candle and turned off every device I owned. No background noise, no screen glare, just me. I opened my journal and wrote one final entry. "I am not the forgotten daughter. I am the one who remembered myself." I closed the book slowly. The apartment was still. But for the first time, it wasn't empty. Because I wasn't either. I stood by the window, watching the city breathe in quiet pulses of light. My reflection stared back, tired, but whole. I wasn't waiting for anyone to show up for me anymore. I had, and that was enough. When your family tries to define your worth by how much you give, how quiet you stay, or how little you ask for, walk away with your dignity intact. The silence you once thought was strength might have just been fear dressed as loyalty. And when you finally speak, when you finally reclaim your voice, they won't know what to do with the sound. I didn't get justice in the way I first imagined. There was no dramatic apology, no overnight healing. But I got something better: clarity, freedom, and self-respect. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. Peace doesn't always arrive with closure. It often comes from choosing yourself even when no one else does. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or made to feel like your existence was inconvenient, know this: you're not alone and you're not invisible. Not here. Not in this space. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been pushed aside by the people you trusted most? Did you stay silent or did you finally speak up? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story touched you, drop a 1 in the chat or tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. And if this video didn't resonate, I'd still love to hear why. What would you have done differently? What does healing look like to you? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you want more real stories that don't sugarcoat family, identity, or healing. Your voice matters here, and so does your experience. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, remember, they can try to erase you, but they can't erase your truth. And one day, that truth will speak louder than their silence ever did.